Chapter 2298. Xiao Chen's indifferent voice was clearly heard by everyone present. His voice was not loud and was very calm, but it gave off an irrefutable feeling. Even the old ancestor of the Green Gate, who had been severely injured by Xiao Chen, chose to remain silent at this moment. Being able to injure him with a single finger, the old ancestor of the Green Gate naturally knew that Xiao Chen was completely capable of killing him. Furthermore, Xiao Chen's words were clearly not an exaggeration. After glancing at the old ancestor of the Green Gate indifferently, Xiao Chen immediately looked at the other 7 old ancestors of the Green Gate and said indifferently, "What? Do you still want to fight?" As he spoke, an inexplicable force instantly erupted from Xiao Chen's body and completely enveloped everyone. Needless to say, this was the power of the Sword Realm. Being enveloped by the Sword Realm, the 8 old ancestors of the Green Gate all felt an immense pressure. Facing such a force that they had never seen before, the expressions of everyone in the Green Gate changed drastically. It was also because Xiao Chen did not have the intention to kill at this moment. Otherwise, those warriors in the Green Gate with low cultivation would probably have their heads separated from their bodies by now. The sudden appearance of a mysterious young man with such formidable strength caused everyone to look at Xiao Chen in shock. The Green Gate did not know Xiao Chen's identity, but now it seemed that Xiao Chen was related to the Wu family. This directly ruled out the possibility that Xiao Chen was from the Wu family. The Green Gate knew the Wu family very well. With the Wu family's ability, it was impossible for them to cultivate such a monstrous genius. Therefore, Xiao Chen was definitely not from the Wu family. Since he was not from the Wu family, then Xiao Chen's identity. Soon, the two sides stopped fighting. Since the Green Gate was personally involved, the Wu family naturally could not ask for more. Naturally, they would not take the initiative to attack again. Meanwhile, a young-looking old ancestor of the Green Gate took the initiative to come in front of Xiao Chen and respectfully bowed. "Young master, this is a matter between the Green Gate and the Wu family. Can I earnestly ask you not to interfere? After this, the Green Gate will definitely reward you handsomely." His attitude was very respectful because this great ancestor of the Green Gate had already guessed Xiao Chen's identity. Hearing this, Xiao Chen smiled with great interest and said, "You know who I am?" "I don't know, but I can guess that young master shouldn't be from the Flame Wind world." Hearing this, the young man replied truthfully. They guessed that Xiao Chen must have come from the world on the other side of the spatial passageway. After all, if there was a young genius like Xiao Chen in the Flame Wind world, how could the Verdant sect not know about him? Therefore, Xiao Chen could only come from the upper-class world on the other side of the spatial passageway. As for the Great Wide World, the Green Gate had not had the time to explore it. After all, the spatial passage that led to the Great Wide World happened to be next to the Tianwu continent, which was still very far away from the Green Gate. The old ancestor of the Green Gate was indeed very smart to have guessed his identity so quickly. Regarding this, Xiao Chen did not deny it and only said indifferently, "Today's matter ends here. I owe the Wu family a favor, so as long as I am around, the Wu family will not be destroyed." The favor that Xiao Chen mentioned was naturally not true. The reason why he stood out to protect the Wu family was entirely because of his son's request. The Wu family probably did not expect that they would be spared from a disaster just because of 2 candies. Xiao Chen's voice was still very calm, but there was a sense of majesty in it that could not be refused. Hearing this, the old ancestor of the Green Gate also locked his gaze on Xiao Chen. After a moment of silence, the old ancestor of the Green Gate finally spoke. "All right, the Green Gate will end today's matter. May I know young master's name?" "Xiao Chen." Hearing this, Xiao Chen replied indifferently, "Young Master Xiao." He straightforwardly agreed to Xiao Chen's request. Hearing this, the other old ancestors of the Green Gate were somewhat puzzled. Logically speaking, even if Xiao Chen's battle prowess was extraordinary, he alone did not seem to be qualified to make the Green Gate stop. However, looking at the old ancestor of the Green Gate who agreed to Xiao Chen's request, the other 7 old ancestors of the Green Gate chose to tacitly agree and did not speak out against it. This was because many people in the Green Gate knew that this old ancestor was the brain of the Green Gate. Perhaps his battle prowess was not the strongest among the old ancestors of the Green Gate, but his brain was the smartest. The reason why the Green Gate was able to rise to the ranks of the four great powers of the Flame Wind realm in such a short period of time was definitely due to his contributions. Ever since the establishment of the Green Gate, this old ancestor of the Green Gate had never made a mistake. His decisions had always been proven to be the most correct in the end. It was also because of this that after hearing his words, the other 7 old ancestors of the Green Gate did not refute or object. Instead, they all chose to tacitly agree. As if he had already guessed this result, after learning Xiao Chen's name, this old ancestor of the Green Gate took the initiative to speak with a smile. "Young Master Xiao, I am Lu Yao. If you need anything in the future, please feel free to let me know. The Green Gate will definitely do its best to help." Hearing Lu Yao's words, Xiao Chen glanced at him indifferently. Then, the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile as he said, "You are a smart person." Lu Yao was indeed a smart person. Not only did he agree to the ceasefire very readily, he even took the initiative to express his willingness to befriend Xiao Chen. From Lu Yao's words, Xiao Chen could easily tell that the Green Gate would listen to Xiao Chen's arrangements in the future. In other words, the Green Gate was willing to submit to Xiao Chen. Of course, now was not the time. At the very least, he had to wait for Xiao Chen to bring out something that was enough to make the Green Gate submit to him. However, although Xiao Chen saw through Lu Yao's thoughts, he did not have many thoughts about the Green Gate. Just like the Wu clan, the Green Gate was still too weak in Xiao Chen's eyes. It was not very attractive. Therefore, after speaking, Xiao Chen ignored Lu Yao and directly turned to leave. Since Lu Yao was a smart person, he naturally knew what to do next. Looking at Xiao Chen's departing figure, an indescribable look flashed across Lu Yao's eyes. Lu Yao was sure that Xiao Chen understood his previous words. However, Xiao Chen did not care about it at all. Or rather, he did not care about it at all. He doesn't even care about the entire Green Gate? Interesting. At this moment, the other old ancestors of the Green Gate came to Lu Yao's side and asked in confusion. "Little brother, are we really going to let it go just like that?" The 8 old ancestors of the Green Gate were sworn brothers. Lu Yao was the youngest, so naturally, he was ranked last. However, in the eyes of the 8 brothers, Lu Yao's words carried the most weight. It could not be helped. After all, he was smart. In the face of his brother's questions, Lu Yao only replied indifferently. "Yes, get everyone to withdraw from the city. Do not harass anyone from the Wu clan." After speaking, without waiting for his brothers to reply, Lu Yao took the initiative to walk towards the Wu clan's old ancestors. Clearly, he had something to say to them. Chapter 2299. After Xiao Chen left, Lu Yao arrived before the ancestors of the Wu family. He smiled and said, "Everyone, since young Master Xiao has spoken, my Azure sect naturally understands the importance of this matter. Not only will we let go of today's matter, but our Azure sect is also willing to rebuild our relationship with the Wu family. What do you all think?" Lu Yao spoke extremely calmly, as if the battle between the two sides had never happened. The 8 ancestors of the Wu family were stunned by Lu Yao's words, but they did not object too much. Firstly, the Azure sect was indeed stronger than the Wu family right now. Not to mention that the Wu family had just suffered a heavy blow. If they could work together with the Azure sect, it would obviously be beneficial to the Wu family. The Wu family had no reason to refuse. Lu Yao seemed to have already expected the ancestors' attitudes, so he directly smiled and spoke before they could say anything. "If that's the case, then I'll have to trouble the Wu family. Don't worry, I'll have the people of the Azure sect remain outside the city. They definitely won't disturb anyone in the Wu family. We can also use this opportunity to discuss future cooperation." Lu Yao directly chose to remain in Tianwu City. The expressions of the ancestors of the Wu family changed slightly, and some of them even called out with ugly expressions. Is it for cooperation or for young Master Xiao? How could the ancestors of the Wu family not know why Lu Yao chose to remain in Tianwu City? He said that he wanted to discuss cooperation with the Wu family, but in reality, it was for Xiao Chen. With Lu Yao's intelligence, he could clearly tell that Xiao Chen's identity was extraordinary. If they could establish a relationship with someone like that, it would definitely be of great help to the Azure sect. Moreover, from the current relationship between the Wu family and Xiao Chen, even if the Wu family had not managed to establish ties with Xiao Chen, it was not difficult to tell that the relationship between Xiao Chen and the Wu family was anything but ordinary from the fact that Xiao Chen had acted on behalf of the Wu family. If the Wu clan were to rely solely on Xiao Chen, then if Xiao Chen or the force behind Xiao Chen wanted to take over the Flame Wind realm, then the Verdant sect and the other two forces would have a hard time dealing with them. The Wu clan would most likely be the ultimate winner. Therefore, Lu Yao's idea was very simple. He wanted a share of the pie with the Wu family. No matter what, he had to establish a relationship with Xiao Chen. This way, even if there were any unforeseen events in the future, the Verdant sect would not be too passive. Lu Yao was indeed a smart person, and he was also very bold. He had only met Xiao Chen once, and he actually dared to make such a decision. Looking at the smiling Lu Yao, one of the Wu clan's patriarchs laughed helplessly. As expected of the Verdant sect's think tank. Since that's the case, we'll do as Mr. Lu says. As for the other members of the Verdant sect, they don't have to leave the city. They can stay in the city. Our Wu clan isn't that petty. Lu Yao was willing to let the other members of the Verdant sect leave Tianwu City and set up camp outside the city. However, the Wu clan's patriarch directly rejected this. What a joke! No matter what, the Wu clan was still one of the four great forces of the Flame Wind realm. If they refused to let the other members of the Verdant sect stay in Tianwu City, wouldn't they become a joke? Letting the members of the Verdant sect stay in Tianwu City could still show the Wu clan's boldness. Hearing the Wu clan's patriarch's words, Lu Yao immediately laughed loudly. Haha, good. As expected of a great clan with tens of thousands of years of heritage. You have such boldness. Then I'll have to trouble you. As he spoke, Lu Yao and the others let the Verdant sect's patriarch arrange for the other members of the Verdant sect to stay in Tianwu City. Of course, the Wu clan's patriarch also let Wu Xing be in charge of this. The two sides, who were originally fighting to the death, were now living under the same roof. No one knew what the patriarchs of both sides were thinking. However, since it was an order from the patriarch, both the Verdant sect's patriarch and Wu Xing could only obey unconditionally. Moreover, since the patriarchs of both sides had spoken, the two sides obviously couldn't fight. No matter if it was Wu Xing or the Verdant sect's patriarch, they would definitely be strictly restrained. These trivial matters were left to Wu Xing and the others. The patriarchs of both sides also accompanied each other to the Wu clan's mansion. In the front hall, the patriarchs of both sides sat opposite each other. At this moment, Lu Yao was drinking tea while asking in a seemingly casual manner. Since we're going to cooperate, I think it's better to be frank about some things. Wu clan's patriarch, I wonder if young Master Xiao, here it comes. This Lu Yao was indeed not someone to be trifled with. As soon as he sat down, he immediately began to inquire about Xiao Chen's identity. However, the Wu clan's patriarch wasn't too surprised about this. This was to be expected. After all, Lu Yao was obviously doing all these things for Xiao Chen. At this moment, it wasn't strange for him to inquire about Xiao Chen's identity. After a moment of silence, one of the Wu clan's patriarchs spoke up. To be honest, we're not too sure about young Master Xiao's identity. We only know that young Master Xiao is from the Great Thousand World on the other side of the space channel. He seems to be the sect master of a large sect. It's said that the strength of the sect that young Master Xiao is in can't even be compared to the entire Flaming Wind realm. The Wu clan's patriarch didn't hide Xiao Chen's identity, and there was nothing to hide. However, upon hearing this, one of the patriarchs of the Verdant sect sneered. I say, isn't your Wu clan boasting too much? A single sect can compete with our Flaming Wind realm? The patriarch of the Verdant sect clearly didn't believe the Wu clan's patriarch's words. What kind of joke was this? A single sect could compete with the Flaming Wind realm? From the Wu clan's patriarch's tone, it seemed like the Flaming Wind realm was far inferior to Xiao Chen's sect. However, after Liu Yao heard the Wu clan's patriarch's words, he fell into deep thought. Facing the patriarch of the Verdant sect's patriarch's suspicion, the Wu clan's patriarch only said one sentence. Whether or not I'm exaggerating, we'll know in the future. However, there's one thing I can tell you, and that is that there are existences that surpass the End Realm and the Great Thousand World. Moreover, one of them is in my Wu clan. The Wu clan's patriarch was naturally talking about Dao Xiong. Hearing that there was an existence that surpassed the End Realm, a bright light flashed across Liu Yao's eyes. An existence that surpassed the End Realm. If what the Wu clan's patriarch said was true, then the Flaming Wind realm really couldn't compete with the Sword sect. Liu Yao let out a breath of turbid air. It seemed like he had placed the right bet. Next, it would depend on how he was going to establish a relationship with Xiao Chen. While the Verdant sect and Wu clan's patriarchs were discussing Xiao Chen's matter, on the other side, in the Great Thousand World, at Tenzu's residence, Jun Wuya and the other sovereigns of the Great Thousand World gathered once again. It was still Tenzu's invitation. No one knew what it was this time. When he saw Tenzu, Tao Ming was the first to speak. Tenzu, what's the matter this time? During this period of time, Tenzu had gathered all the sovereigns together. Everyone had some doubts in their hearts. Hearing this, Tenzu said with a solemn expression. I heard that the Flaming Wind realm has appeared. It seems like the entrance to the space tunnel is within the Sword Mansion. This Flaming Wind realm isn't simple. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2300. The Flaming Wind realm was just a minor thousand world. Logically speaking, Tenzu should not have paid too much attention to the birth of such a minor thousand world. However, at this time, Tenzu had gathered all the emperors together because of the birth of the Flaming Wind realm. From what he said, the Flaming Wind realm seemed to be very unusual. Hearing Tenzu's words, Jun Wuya and the other emperors frowned slightly. Luo Xing then asked, what is the problem? Tenzu, please tell us clearly. Luo Xing and the others naturally did not know much about the Flaming Wind realm. Seeing this, Tenzu also opened his mouth to explain. The Flaming Wind realm is indeed a minor thousand world, but it is also a sealed place. Sealed place? Hearing Tenzu's words, the emperors murmured softly. Yes, it is a sealed place, and the target of the seal is the evil cultivators of the Dark Age. The Dark Age. Hearing Tenzu's words, the faces of the emperors present changed. Perhaps they had not experienced the Dark Age, but they had obviously heard of it. Nowadays, whether it was the Great Thousand World or the various minor thousand worlds, it was basically dominated by the righteous sects. At the same time, the so-called righteous sects almost did not exist. However, the situation in the Great Thousand World was not like this in the past. Many years had passed since then. In that era, the Great Thousand World and the various minor thousand worlds could be said to be dominated by evil cultivators. There was no daylight, so it was also called the Dark Age by later generations. In that era, evil cultivators had almost become the mainstream of the Great Thousand World. Because of their different cultivation methods, they were cruel and had to use living people to cultivate, causing the entire Great Thousand World to be shrouded in darkness. It was also because the evil cultivators were too strong that the righteous sects of that era were simply like fish on a chopping board. They could only be slaughtered. In such a dark, cruel, and tyrannical era, the cultivators of the vast thousand domains suffered the most. In the end, it was Tenzu who came forward and united the sovereign masters of the righteous Tao to fight the evil Tao and emerge victorious. Even so, there were still some powerful evil sovereigns who were too powerful to be killed. Therefore, Tenzu could only think of a way to seal them. He did not choose to seal them in the Great Thousand World, but in a minor thousand world, which was the Flaming Wind realm. The Flaming Wind realm was a sealed place where the defeated heretical experts were sealed. Although many years had passed, Tenzu didn't know if these heretical experts had died or if they were trying to break the seal and reappear in the world. He told the truth to everyone present. After hearing Tenzu's words, the sovereigns also understood why Tenzu attached so much importance to the Flame Wind realm. This was because once the heretical cultivators in the Flame Wind realm broke the seal, the entire vast thousand domains would probably fall into darkness again. After learning the truth about the Flame Wind realm, Jun Wuya and Luo Xing's expressions changed slightly. This was because Xiao Chen and the others were still in the Flame Wind realm. If what Tenzu said was true, then the situation would be really serious. A trace of seriousness had already appeared in their hearts, but Tenzu's next words made the sovereigns' hearts even heavier. Back then, in order to seal these heretical experts, a total of 3 sealed places were chosen, and the Flame Wind realm was only one of them. Now that the Flame Wind realm has reappeared, I don't know what the situation is like in the other 2 sealed places. The Flame Wind realm was only one of the 3 sealed places. If all the heretical experts in these 3 sealed places were to break free, then the vast thousand domains would probably fall into darkness again. Frowning slightly, Tenzu looked at the changes in the sovereign's expressions and said in a deep voice, "We absolutely cannot let the Dark Age descend again. Therefore, I hope that everyone can put aside their previous enmity and at least work together on this matter. Otherwise, if we can't stop these heretical experts, the vast thousand domains will not be able to escape this calamity." As Tenzu spoke, his gaze swept across Jun Wuya, Tao Ming, Li Xiao, and Yin Lit Ian. Among all the sovereigns present, the hatred between the 4 of them was the deepest. The Sword Gate and the Heavenly Harmony Sect, the Heavenly Policy Mansion and the Heavenly Yin Tower were basically mortal enemies. Even so, the Heavenly Ancestors still hoped that everyone could join forces. If they wanted to fight against the Dark Age, they could only have a chance of winning by gathering the strength of the entire vast thousand domains. Otherwise, they would definitely lose. This time, the vast thousand domains had to put aside their internal conflicts and solve the problem of the Dark Age first. After hearing Tenzu's words, everyone naturally understood the stakes involved. Jun Wuya immediately expressed his stance. The Sword Sect can temporarily put aside our previous enmity. Jun Wuya was the ancestor of the Sword Sect, so he could naturally represent the entire Sword Sect. Upon hearing his words, Tao Ming, Li Xiao, and Yin Lit Ian also spoke up one after another. They were also willing to temporarily put aside their previous enmity and work together to deal with the heretical experts of the Dark Age. All the previous enmity and the impending arrival of the heretical experts of the Dark Age were naturally more important than the other. In the face of the heretical experts of the Dark Age, if everyone still wanted to fight on their own and be suspicious of each other, then they could only wait for death. The Heavenly Ancestor nodded when he saw that everyone had expressed their stance. Only by gathering all the forces of the Great Thousand World would they be able to fight against the evil cultivators of the Age of Darkness. However, the Heavenly Ancestor was not confident about the outcome of this battle. After all, there was no doubt that the heretical experts of the Dark Age were very powerful. Otherwise, the entire vast thousand domains would not have been plunged into darkness. Furthermore, due to the differences in the cultivation methods of the heretical experts, they had endless means and were not easy to deal with. After knowing the truth, Jun Wuya and Luo Xing took the lead to leave. As Xiao Chen and the rest were still in the Flaming Wind realm, Jun Wuya and Luo Xing had to hurry over to prevent any accidents from happening to Xiao Chen and the rest. After Jun Wuya and Luo Xing left, Tenzu said to the rest of the people present, "Everyone, let's not talk too much. Get ready to welcome the arrival of the Dark Age. We don't know when the other 2 sealed places will appear." Under the leadership of Tenzu, the vast thousand domains began to prepare for the arrival of the Dark Age. On the other side, in the center of the 4 continents in the Flaming Wind realm, the space in the starry sky, which was supposed to be completely dark, was distorted at this moment. It was as if something was forcibly tearing the space apart. Moreover, from time to time, there were waves of soul-stirring cries that made one's hair stand on end. Chapter 2301. Cries and shouts could be heard from time to time in the distorted space. At the same time, wisps of blood chi seeped out from the cracks in the space. cries and shouts could be heard from time to time in the distorted space. At the same time, wisps of blood chi seeped out from the cracks in the space. If anyone saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked. Unfortunately, this was a boundless starry sky, and very few people would pass by. On the other side of the distorted space, there seemed to be another world. This was indeed the case. On the other side of the distorted space was the place where Tenza sealed the evil cultivators after the great battle between the good and evil. This sealed area was actually a confined space. It was not large, and the entire space was densely covered with countless sealing talisman arrays. Moreover, their grades were not low. At this moment, the sky above the sealed place was dyed red, as if it was covered in blood. In the sky, ferocious faces could be seen. The soul-stirring cries and howls came from the mouths of these blood-red faces. For such a long time, these evil cultivators had been constantly attacking the sealed place. At this time, the seal of the sealed place was extremely weak. It was obvious that it could no longer trap them. After being sealed for so many years, they finally saw the hope of breaking the seal. This made many evil cultivators very excited. Time slowly passed. After a short period of less than a day, the distorted space finally could not withstand the enormous force and abruptly shattered. The seal had been completely broken through. Along with the shattering of space, a terrifying pressure instantly spread out, accompanied by a rich blood aura. Soon, 5 men and women in ragged clothes and disheveled hair, who looked like beggars, slowly walked out of the sealed land. The appearance of these 5 people was indeed not flattering, but the aura they exuded was frightening. Each of them was a venerable emperor. The leader of the group was a middle-aged man. He looked ordinary, but his triangular eyes made people shudder. The middle-aged man took a deep breath and sneered. "How many years has it been? We finally broke this damned seal. The outside air is still the best. It makes people excited." Hearing the middle-aged man's words, a beautiful woman beside him chuckled. Her clothes were tattered, and one could vaguely see her ample bosom. "All right, the Sky Ancestor has probably noticed what's happening here. We don't have much time," another white-haired old man said faintly after hearing the middle-aged man and the beautiful woman's words. Tenza must have sensed that the seal was broken, so they had to be prepared before Tenza took action. Hearing the white-haired old man's words, the other 4 nodded slightly. Then, the 5 of them took action at the same time. Terrifying blood chi gushed out of their bodies and continuously entered the sealed place. The 5 of them were using a secret technique that evil cultivators mastered to refine to resurrect to death. In the sealed place, other than the 5 of them, there were many evil cultivators who had been killed before. These evil cultivators were not as strong as the 5 of them, so they were all killed during the battle between good and evil. Their corpses were also directly discarded in the sealed place. After so many years, most of these evil cultivators' bodies had rotted away, leaving only skeletons. However, under the nourishment of the 5 people's blood chi, a shocking scene appeared. Flesh and blood grew from the skeletons. Of course, this kind of resurrection was not a true resurrection. That was why it was said to be more like a method of refining corpses. It could allow these evil cultivators to have the combat strength they had when they were alive, but they would lose their consciousness and thoughts. To put it bluntly, they were walking corpses. Even so, such a method was heaven-defying. Once these evil cultivators were resurrected, they would form a terrifying force even if they did not have consciousness and thoughts. Without consciousness, there would be no fear, and no betrayal. When the time came, the 5 people's orders would be inviolable to this puppet-like evil cultivator army. One by one, the evil cultivators stood up with empty eyes. Soon, in the sealed place, the evil cultivators who were originally dead seemed to have been completely resurrected. A terrifying force was awakening, and darkness seemed to be shrouding the great thousand world once again. However, Xiaochen and the others, who were in the Flaming Wind realm, were unaware of this. After staying in Tianwu City for a few days, Liu Yao kept looking for opportunities to build a relationship with Xiaochen and the others. This was also the reason why Liu Yao stayed in Tianwu City. On this day, Liu Yao came to Xiao Chen's residence as usual. His attitude towards Xiao Chen was still respectful. Xiao Chen did not say much about this. He knew what Liu Yao was thinking, but Xiao Chen was still not very interested in the verdant sect. After inviting Liu Yao to take a seat, he personally poured a cup of wine for Liu Yao. Xiao Chen said with a smile, "I know what you are thinking, but to be honest, I am not very interested in the Flaming Wind Realm, and I am not willing to interfere in the matters of the Flaming Wind Realm," Xiao Chen said bluntly. Hearing this, Liu Yao also understood what Xiao Chen meant. He nodded and said, "I naturally understand what young Master Xiao means. I also do not dare to ask for too much. I just hope to form a good relationship with young Master Xiao." Since Xiao Chen did not like the verdant sect, Liu Yao naturally did not dare to force him. During these few days, Liu Yao also went to visit Dao Xiong. Unfortunately, he did not see Dao Xiong's face. However, just by looking at the courtyard, Liu Yao's intuition told him that the person in the courtyard was definitely not simple. This was because Liu Yao's spiritual sense could not sense anyone in the courtyard. To be able to easily hide from the spiritual sense of an end-realm expert and make him unable to sense his existence at all, this was enough to prove that Dao Xiong was not ordinary. Just as Liu Yao and Xiao Chen were talking, in the courtyard next door, Dao Xiong, who was originally enjoying his wine, suddenly stood up. He looked into the distant sky, and a serious look flashed across his eyes. To be able to make a venerable emperor reveal such a serious expression, it was obviously not a small matter. In fact, it was indeed so. Dao Xiong felt a thick blood aura, and within this blood aura, there were even 5 venerable emperors' auras. However, these 5 auras gave off a very cold and evil feeling. 5 venerable emperors? There are venerable emperors in the Flaming Wind Realm? Dao Xiong frowned and muttered softly. Chapter 2302. Xiao Chen and the others could not sense the rich blood qi because Xiao Chen's cultivation was not high enough. However, Dao Xiong was an emperor realm figure, so his senses were extremely sharp. Even though they were far away, Dao Xiong still managed to capture a trace of blood qi. Xiao Chen and the others could not sense the rich blood qi because their cultivation was not high enough. However, as an emperor realm figure, Dao Xiong's senses were extremely sharp. Even though they were far away, Dao Xiong still managed to capture a trace of blood qi. Of course, the blood qi was not the reason why Dao Xiong's expression turned grave. What really caught his attention was the aura of the 5 emperor realm figures in the blood qi. Frowning slightly, Dao Xiong once again tried to sense with his heart, but unfortunately, he did not capture anything this time. Was I wrong? He wondered if he had sensed wrongly. After all, the Flame Wind Realm was just a minor thousand world. How could there be emperors? 5 emperors at that? It was impossible for a minor thousand world to give birth to an emperor realm master because the heavenly Dao here could not support an emperor realm master. However, the blood qi in front of him was real. For a moment, Dao Xiong's heart was filled with doubts. At the same time, at the entrance of the sealed land, the 5 evil sovereigns had all concealed their auras. The beautiful woman said with a smile, "There is actually an emperor realm master in this Flame Wind Realm. We were almost discovered by him just now." Clearly, Dao Xiong's senses were not wrong. When he had discovered the beautiful woman and the others, the 5 of them had also discovered Dao Xiong. Therefore, they had immediately concealed their auras. Since they were so far away, Dao Xiong naturally could not sense them. Hearing the beautiful woman's words, the middle-aged man beside her said indifferently, "Even if there is an emperor realm master, he is probably from the Great Thousand World. However, it just so happens that there is only one of them." Only one emperor realm master was not a threat to the beautiful woman and the others. 5 against 1, there was no reason for them to lose. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, the beautiful woman's smile grew wider. "You are still like this after so many years. Now you want to kill someone? Hee, a venerable sovereign's qi and blood is a great tonic. What, you don't want it?" The middle-aged man sneered. there was a huge difference between the cultivation methods of evil cultivators and orthodox cultivators. Therefore, in the eyes of evil cultivators, the blood chi of orthodox cultivators was a great supplement, especially the blood chi of venerable emperors. It was simply a peerless treasure. Xiaochen guessed that Dao Xiong might be a sovereign venerate from the Great Thousand Realms. However, right now, Dao Xiong was alone. This was the best time to make a move. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, the others nodded and said, "Since that's the case, let's do it." After the blood refinement, these fellows will need a few more days to fully awaken. As they spoke, the 5 of them glanced at the interior of the sealed land. At this moment, there were countless evil cultivators standing in the sealed land. However, these evil cultivators all had empty eyes. It was obvious that they had yet to fully awaken. The blood refinement had been completed. All that was left was time. This time would not be too long. The shortest would be 3 days, and the longest would not be more than 5 days. When the time came, the evil cultivator army that had plunged the Great Thousand Realms into darkness would be able to reappear in the world in another way. This time, the evil cultivator army was obviously even more terrifying. This was because they had all become mindless monsters. They did not know fear or cowardice. They only knew how to kill. They planned to kill Dao Xiong while he was alone. With the decision made, the beautiful woman and the others disappeared from where they were and rushed towards the Tianwu Road. Venerable sovereigns were very fast. They arrived at the Tianwu Road in less than a day. At this time, many cultivators on the Tianwu Road did not realize that a huge disaster was about to befall them. It was the real end of the world. In the following time, Dao Xiong was not in the mood to drink. The originally delicious wine had now become tasteless. Dao Xiong kept thinking about the 5 venerable sovereigns. He felt uneasy. Dao Xiong immediately sent a message to Jun Wuya and Luo Xing. Unfortunately, neither of them replied. This was natural. Jun Wuya and Luo Xing were on their way back to the Great Thousand Realms. Naturally, they would not receive Dao Xiong's message. Half a day later, at dusk, Jun Wuya and Luo Xing finally returned to the Great Thousand Realms and received Dao Xiong's message. Knowing that Dao Xiong had sensed 5 venerable sovereigns' auras in the Flaming Wind Realm, Jun Wuya's eyes flashed with a cold light. He said helplessly, "It seems that the situation is worse than we thought." Jun Wuya had already learned from the heavenly ancestor that the Flame Wind Realm was the sealed land. Naturally, it was not difficult for him to determine that the 5 emperors' auras were not an illusion at all. They really existed. It seems that the sealed land has been broken. The evil dominator has probably come out. Luo Xing also said in a deep voice when he heard Jun Wuya's words. Hearing this, Jun Wuya did not hesitate anymore. He immediately sent a message to Dao Xiong, asking him to immediately take Xiaochen and the others out of the Flaming Wind Realm. He also told Dao Xiong that the Flaming Wind Realm was the sealed land. After replying to Dao Xiong, Jun Wuya and Luo Xing continued to move. They rushed directly to the Flaming Wind Realm, preparing to meet up with Xiaochen and the others. Finally, he received Jun Wuya's reply. However, this reply did not make Dao Xiong feel at ease. On the contrary, it let Dao Xiong know the current situation of everyone. In the reply, Jun Wuya clearly told Dao Xiong that the sealed land had probably been broken, and the 5 venerable sovereigns' auras that he had sensed should be the evil dominator who had come to break the seal. Therefore, Dao Xiong must immediately take Xiaochen and the others out of the Flaming Wind Realm. Not daring to hesitate, Dao Xiong directly came to Xiaochen's courtyard in a flash. When he saw Xiaochen and Dao Ju, Dao Xiong immediately said, "Something has happened in the Flaming Wind Realm. Come back with me immediately." He did not have time to explain anything to Xiaochen and the others. After saying this, Dao Xiong left using the space spirit boat that could not be taken out. However, at this moment, a cloud of blood fog suddenly appeared in the sky above Tianwu City. The blood fog directly covered the entire sky above Tianwu City, and under the cover of the blood fog, one could vaguely see 5 figures. This sudden change caused Dao Xiong's face to darken. He thought helplessly in his heart, is it still too late? After receiving Jun Hui's reply, Dao Xiong did not hesitate at all. He immediately prepared to take Xiao Chen and the others and leave. However, in the end, it was still too late. The beautiful woman and the other 4 evil dominators had already arrived at Tianwu City. The entire Tianwu City was shrouded in the blood fog. The dense blood qi caused the cultivators in Tianwu City to raise their heads to look at the sky in shock, not knowing what had happened. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 2303. Looking at the blood aura in the sky that was getting thicker and thicker, the entire sky was dyed the color of blood. The thick blood aura was about to form a blood cloud. Looking at the blood aura in the sky that was getting thicker and thicker, the entire sky was dyed the color of blood. The thick blood aura was about to form a blood cloud. Under the gazes of the crowd, above the thick blood aura, the figures of the beautiful woman and the other evil sovereigns gradually became clearer. They were still wearing their tattered clothes, but at this moment, no one dared to laugh at them. Following the appearance of the beautiful woman and the other evil sovereigns, a terrifying pressure suddenly descended from the sky. Under the pressure of this pressure, the cultivators with lower cultivation in Heavenly Wu City quickly exploded. The sound of blood exploding continuously rang out. They were still alive, but in the next second, they might turn into a cloud of blood mist. Looking at the people around them exploding one after another, not only the cultivators of the Wu family, but also the people of the Green Sect. Moreover, the most unbelievable thing was that the blood aura of these people who had exploded into clouds of blood mist was continuously gathering in the sky. Then, it was directly absorbed into the bodies of the beautiful woman and the other evil sovereigns. Continuously devouring the blood aura of the cultivators of the 2 great sects below, the beautiful woman and the other evil sovereigns gradually revealed a smile on their faces. Licking her lips seductively, the beautiful woman smiled with a face full of enjoyment. It's been a long time since I tasted blood. It's still so delicious. Don't forget our purpose. How can the blood aura of these ants compare to the blood aura of a sovereign? Hearing this, the middle-aged man beside her said in a deep voice. In response, the beautiful woman smiled seductively and said, "Of course I know that. However, it shouldn't hurt to have some appetizers." As she spoke, the beautiful woman's gaze locked onto the Wu family's mansion, where Dao Xiong was in the courtyard. As sovereigns, the beautiful woman and the others naturally locked onto Dao Xiong easily. At the same time, the disaster in Heavenly Wu City was still spreading. Facing the 5 evil masters, those martial artists with lower cultivation could not even withstand their auras. Furthermore, the auras of evil cultivators were incomparably cold, making it even harder for people to resist. The sudden turn of events naturally alarmed the various patriarchs of the Wu family and the Green Sect. However, when they saw the 5 great evil sovereigns in the sky, the various patriarchs were terrified. Without any hesitation, the group of people came before Dao Xiong. However, before they could speak, Dao Xiong spoke. They're all existences on the same level as me. There's no need to think too much about it. Just run. Run as far as you can. Dao Xiong was not in the mood to care about the life and death of the Wu family and the Verdant Sect. What a joke! In the current situation, Dao Xiong could not even protect himself. He also had to take care of Xiao Chen and the others. How could he care about the Wu family and the Verdant Sect? As for whether they could escape or not, that would depend on their luck. Hearing Dao Xiong's words, the Wu family and the Verdant Sect's patriarchs did not hesitate at all. They immediately ordered the experts of the 2 sects to flee Heavenly Wu City. Seeing that the Wu family and the Verdant Sect were about to escape, the 5 great evil sovereigns in the sky sneered. The white-haired old man said in a deep voice, "Can you escape? Blood refining heaven and earth." As the old man spoke, countless blood auras shot up from the ground around Heavenly Wu City. In an instant, they enveloped the entire Heavenly Wu City. Under the envelopment of these blood auras, the entire Heavenly Wu city seemed to have turned into a huge millstone, grinding away the flesh and blood of many martial artists. The blood auras madly gathered towards the 5 great evil sovereigns. From the looks of it, they were obviously going to exterminate all life in Heavenly Wu city. Xiao Chen and the others were still fine. Under Dao Xiong's protection, they were not affected by the blood auras. However, it was different for the others. They frantically tried to run out of Heavenly Wu city. However, many of them were unable to run out of Heavenly Wu city. Their flesh and blood were directly ground away. They greedily devoured the rich blood auras. To the evil cultivators, the blood auras of martial artists were their greatest nourishment. They were the best cultivation resources. After so many years, the 5 great evil sovereigns finally tasted the blood auras of martial artists again. For a moment, the 5 of them greedily absorbed the blood auras. Seeing all this, Dao Xiong did not have any intention to intervene. In his heart, protecting Xiao Chen and the others was his only mission. As for the life and death of the Wu family in the Verdant sect, it did not have much to do with Dao Xiong. If he had the ability, perhaps Dao Xiong would intervene. However, facing the 5 great evil sovereigns at the same time, Dao Xiong did not know how to deal with them. How could he care about the life and death of the Wu family in the Verdant sect? He wanted to use the spatial spirit boat to escape. However, Dao Xiong sharply discovered that the surrounding space had long been confined. With the space confined, the spatial spirit boat naturally lost its function. No matter how fast the spatial spirit boat was, it did not have the ability to break the spatial imprisonment. Furthermore, the spatial imprisonment was completed by the 5 great evil sovereigns at the same time. Even if Dao Xiong intervened, he would not be able to break it in a short period of time. Unable to retreat, Dao Xiong could only look at the 5 great evil sovereigns in the sky. After about 100 breaths, more than 90% of the martial artists in Heavenly Wu City had been killed. Their blood auras had also been directly absorbed by the 5 great evil sovereigns. The number of people who were lucky enough to escape could be counted on one hand. 2 of the Wu family and the Verdant sect's ancestors had fallen in Heavenly Wu City. As for the remaining survivors, the 5 great evil sovereigns clearly had no interest in pursuing them. To them, the blood auras of ordinary martial artists were not anything good. They were far less tempting than Dao Xiong's blood. Their gazes fell on Dao Xiong at the same time. Then, the 5 great evil sovereigns simultaneously landed in the courtyard where Dao Xiong was. First, they swept their eyes over Xiao Chen and the others. Then, their gazes locked onto Dao Xiong. The 5 great evil sovereigns licked their lips and spoke with an extremely seductive look. The blood aura of a sovereign has not been normal for a long time. If you don't resist, I can let you die in pleasure. How about it? As she spoke, the look in the 5 great evil sovereigns' eyes became even more charming. Facing her eyes, Xiao Chen and Dao Ju were immediately dazed. Even Dao Xiong's eyes lost their luster for a moment. However, it was only for a moment before Dao Xiong regained his senses and shouted coldly. Charm technique. Xiao Chen, Juer, don't look into her eyes. The 5 great evil sovereigns were obviously proficient in the charm technique. Even Dao Xiong almost fell for it. Under Dao Xiong's rebuke, Xiao Chen and Dao Ju suddenly regained their senses. However, their backs were drenched in cold sweat. At the same time, they did not dare to look into the 5 great evil sovereigns' eyes. Although the 5 great evil sovereigns were extremely beautiful, and compared to Qin Shuru and the other women, the 5 great evil sovereigns had a different flavor and was even more seductive. However, Xiao Chen and Dao Ju were very clear that this woman was definitely in existence that would devour people without spitting out the bones. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 2304. In order to prevent Dao Xiong from escaping, the beautiful woman and the others had already sealed the space around them. Even Dao Xiong would not be able to break through the space and escape in a short amount of time. In order to prevent Dao Xiong from escaping, the beautiful woman and the others had already sealed the space around them. Even Dao Xiong would not be able to break through the space and escape in a short amount of time. Seeing Dao Xiong break free from her charm in an instant, the beautiful woman was not angry at all. Instead, she smiled even more charmingly. "You're very strong. I didn't expect to meet such a strong person as soon as I came out. Why don't you join us? I promise you won't regret it." As she spoke, the beautiful woman gave Dao Xiong a coquettish look. Her posture was indescribably charming. However, if one thought that the beautiful woman was a simple person to be able to become an evil dominator, then one would be gravely mistaken. Dao Xiong knew this very well. However, Jun Wuya and Luo Xing had not arrived yet. Dao Xiong wanted to stall for time, so he purposely revealed a conflicted expression. "Join you? Could it be that I can live if I join you?" Dao Xiong said this on purpose. He wanted to stall for time until Jun Wuya and Luo Xing arrived. In Jun Wuya's reply, he had already told Dao Xiong that he and Luo Xing were on their way to the Flame Wind Realm. Hearing Dao Xiong's words, the beautiful woman smiled and replied, "Of course. Not only can you keep your life, you can also have me. I promise you've never experienced the feeling of being with me." Every single action of the beautiful woman was captivating. However, Dao Xiong was already prepared and was not bewitched. However, as soon as the beautiful woman finished speaking and before Dao Xiong could reply, the middle-aged man who was the leader of the group spoke coldly, "Don't worry. Chimei, cut the crap. Let's take this person down first." The middle-aged man was very cautious. Or rather, he had already seen through Dao Xiong's thoughts. He had no intention of joining the evil dominators. He was only saying this to stall for time. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, Chimei sneered and said, "Man, Brother Violet Snake is already impatient. Looks like you don't have a chance." As she spoke, Chimei pointed her finger. A blood-red light flashed and instantly shot towards Dao Xiong. This woman's face changed very quickly. Just a second ago, she was still seductive, and the next moment, she was going for the kill. However, to Blade Xiong, who was already prepared, Chimei's attack was nothing. The only thing that made Blade Xiong depressed was that he had no way of dodging Chimei's attack. It was not that Dao Xiong could not dodge, but Xiao Chen and the others were behind him. Once Dao Xiong dodged, Xiao Chen and the others would be in trouble. Although Xiao Chen and the others weren't weak and could kill enemies above their realm, it didn't mean that Xiao Chen and the others had the strength to contend with emperors. Therefore, in order to protect Xiao Chen and the others, Dao Xiong could have easily dodged the attack. However, in the end, he did not choose to dodge. Instead, he chose to face the attack head-on. With a punch, the fist and blood-red finger collided fiercely, shattering Chimei's attack. However, at the same time, Violet Snake and the other 4 evil sovereigns also directly attacked Dao Xiong. In order to prevent any accidents from happening, Violet Snake's idea was to immediately take down Dao Xiong. As for the rest, they could deal with it later. Facing the siege of 4 evil sovereigns at the same time, in addition to having to protect Xiao Chen and the others, Dao Xiong naturally fell into a disadvantage. At this time, Chimei did not join the battle. Instead, she turned her gaze towards Xiao Chen and Dao Ju. Looking at the two of them, Chimei smiled charmingly. "I didn't expect there to be 2 talented little fellows. How about it? Do you want to come to Elder Sister? Elder Sister will definitely make you feel like you're in heaven." With their previous experience, Xiao Chen and Dao Ju did not dare to look into Chimei's eyes. This woman was said to be a stunner, but Xiao Chen and Dao Ju were not the kind of people who would be willing to die under a peony flower. Knowing how dangerous Chimei was, Xiao Chen and Dao Ju did not have any intention of paying attention to her. However, at this time, Xiao Chen's mind was constantly thinking of a way to escape. Unfortunately, in the face of absolute strength, it seemed that all methods were useless. Even Dao Xiong could not escape with them, let alone Xiao Chen. Even if he had a plan, he did not have enough strength to carry it out. On this side, Dao Xiong's situation was becoming more and more dangerous. From the looks of it, only death awaited him. Just as everyone's mood was becoming increasingly heavy, a green light suddenly shot over from the horizon. After which, it violently bombarded the space that had been sealed. Master. Seeing the green light attack, Xiaochen was delighted. Naturally, Xiaochen was not unfamiliar with this aura. It was his master, Junwuya. The green light quickly tore through the confined space. Then, Junwuya and Luo Xing appeared in front of Xiaochen and the others. Noticing Junwuya and Luo Xing's arrival, Violet Snake's group of 4 stopped their attacks. Dao Xiong, on the other hand, had a trace of blood hanging from the corner of his mouth as he said, "Do you dare to come any later? You almost had time to collect my corpse." Facing 4 evil sovereigns at the same time, Dao Xiong was indeed under a lot of pressure. However, his words were a little exaggerated. After all, Dao Xiong was an emperor. It was especially easy to kill him. Don't be fooled by the blood on the corner of his mouth. In fact, Dao Xiong did not suffer any serious injuries. At least, it did not affect his battle strength. An emperor-level figure was naturally not that easy to kill. Even if 4 evil sovereigns joined forces, killing Dao Ju was not something that could be done in an instant. Therefore, hearing Dao Xiong's words, Junwuya did not care at all. He only said in a deep voice, "Where's the spatial spirit ship? Let these little guys go first." Junwuya was more concerned about the safety of Xiaochen and the others. Now that he and Luo Xing had arrived and the spatial spirit ship had been broken, the spatial spirit ship could be used. As long as they successfully boarded the spatial spirit ship, with its speed, even Purple Snake and Chi Mei would not be able to catch up. Hearing Junwuya's words, Dao Xiong did not hesitate. He immediately took out the spatial spirit ship from his storage ring and threw it to Dao Ju. "Juer, let's go." After receiving the spatial spirit ship, Dao Ju immediately started it. Xiaochen and the others also quickly boarded the spatial spirit ship. At the same time, Purple Snake and the others saw the spatial spirit ship and their expressions changed slightly. Spatial spirit ship? Chi Mei, stop them. Purple Snake naturally knew about the spatial spirit ship, so he immediately ordered Chi Mei to attack. However, just as Chi Mei was about to attack, Junwuya suddenly stood in front of Chi Mei and blocked her attack. "My disciple wants to leave. You'd better not stop him. As an evil sovereign, you actually attacked the younger generation. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at?" With Junwuya's obstruction, Xiaochen and the others seized the opportunity to successfully start the spatial spirit ship. Then, they quickly disappeared into the horizon. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. End of chapter. Chapter 2305. Under Junwuya's protection, Xiaochen and the others successfully escaped. However, Chi Mei and Zishi's attention was not on Xiaochen and the others, but on Junwuya. What was unbelievable was that there were 2 Junwuya in the courtyard. In front of Chi Mei and Zishi, there was a Junwuya. They were not after images at all, because the 2 Junwuyas were extremely solid, and they both had the aura of an Emperor Realm Master, which could not be faked. Zishi stared at Junwuya, and after a while, she said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect to see the 3 Pure Ones again." The so-called 3 Pure Ones incarnation was an extremely powerful ability. Throughout the history of the Great Thousand World, there were less than 5 people who could comprehend its mysteries. As an old monster who had lived for countless years, the Purple Snake had naturally seen the 3 Pure Ones incarnations. Furthermore, the Purple Snake had been defeated and sealed by the 3 Pure Ones incarnations. To put it simply, the 3 Pure Ones could split into 3 bodies. These 3 bodies all had the same combat strength, and there was no distinction between the primary and the secondary. Furthermore, as long as one of the incarnations was still alive, it could achieve immortality. Zishi looked at Junwuya with eyes full of hatred. As Junwuya had also comprehended the 3 Pure Ones, Zishi could not help but recall the scene when she was defeated and sealed by Junwuya. Back then, Shi had also encountered an emperor who had comprehended the prime clear incarnation, which was why she was defeated by him. She did not expect to encounter the three pure ones again after breaking the seal. Is this the will of the heavens? Even so, so what? My fate is in my own hands, not in the hands of the heavens. She sighed softly and said indifferently. However, towards the end, a monstrous hatred erupted from Shi's eyes. At the same time, an extremely cold blood chi soared into the sky from Shi's body. She had already been defeated by the three pure ones once, and she could not be defeated a second time. So what if it was fate? In any case, as the evil lord, he was an existence that the heavenly Tao did not tolerate. He swore a break through the heavens. Shi shouted angrily. Immediately after, Shi attacked and punched towards Junwuya. In the face of Purple Snake's attack, Junwuya's expression did not change much. He merely said, "Back then, I should have destroyed you at all costs." As he spoke, Junwuya casually struck out with his palm. When the fist and the palm collided, the terrifying shockwave instantly raised the entire Tianwu city to the ground. Following Junwuya and Violet Snake's actions, Luo Xing and Dao Xiong naturally did not remain idle. The two of them simultaneously faced off against the two evil sovereigns. As for Junwuya, he was fighting against three evil sovereigns by himself. Once again, he split into three bodies. Junwuya fought Shi, Qi Mei, and another white-haired old man. Seeing Junwuya split into three bodies, Shi's eyes were filled with hatred. As he attacked, he gritted his teeth and said, "Not bad. It seems like you have comprehended the three pure ones to the perfect realm. But so what? Do you think you can fight against the three of us at the same time?" To be honest, Shi was a little afraid of the three pure ones. After all, he was defeated by the three pure ones in the past. Now that he was facing the three pure ones again, the shadow did not disappear. However, it was precisely because of this fear that Shi was even more determined to kill Junwuya. Now that they had the advantage in numbers, 5 against 3, with such a good opportunity, they could not let Junwuya leave alive. One should know that the reason why Shi was defeated in the past was because he was fighting against the three pure ones by himself. To put it bluntly, Shi was defeated because he was fighting against three evil sovereigns by himself. However, at this moment, Junwuya's three pure ones were not all used to deal with Shi. Instead, he had to face three evil sovereigns at the same time. As a result, Shi's pressure was greatly reduced. The murderous intent in his eyes gathered crazily, and he looked like he would not rest until he was dead. However, Junwuya's expression remained as calm as an ancient well, as if he did not feel that his side was at a disadvantage. "Humph. Although the three pure ones are strong, you are fighting against three evil sovereigns by yourself. You can't unleash the full power of the three pure ones. Moreover, using the three pure ones will consume a lot of energy even for a sovereign. You can't hold on for too long," Shi said coldly. Shi knew a lot about the three pure ones, and Junwuya did not refute his words. The most terrifying thing about the three pure ones was that they could fight against many. The effect was especially obvious in a one-on-one battle. However, Junwuya was fighting against three evil sovereigns by himself. As a result, the effect of the three pure ones was weakened. In other words, the effect of the three pure ones was not highlighted at all. However, there was no other way. Although Dao Xiong and Luo Xing were strong, the two of them could not fight against many. After all, Shi and the other evil sovereigns were not weak. As a result, only Junwuya, who had comprehended the three pure ones, could hold back Shi and the other two evil sovereigns. After blocking Shi's attack with his palm, Junwuya said faintly, "You know a lot about the three pure ones. You should have fought against them before. If I'm not wrong, you should have been defeated by them." Junwuya guessed correctly. With the scar exposed, Shi's eyes were filled with anger. He glared at Junwuya and shouted coldly, "You're courting death." As he said that, he suddenly threw out a punch. Facing Shi's angry punch, Junwei threw out a palm as usual. The fist and the palm collided, and the two of them were still evenly matched. You know how terrifying the three Pure One's incarnations are, but you don't know how terrifying I am. You lost to the three Pure One's incarnations back then. Although I don't know who defeated you, if you think that I only rely on the three Pure One's incarnations, then you are gravely mistaken. Even if I can't make full use of the three Pure One's incarnations' advantage, do you really think that I don't have any other tricks up my sleeve? Junwei said unhurriedly as he blocked the purple snake's attack again. As he said that, a lotus flower slowly bloomed under Junwei's feet. The lotus flower was beautiful and even emitted waves of fragrance. Under the gloominess of the refining, Junwei seemed even more ethereal. After the lotus flower appeared, every step Junwei took seemed to cause ripples in the air. It was as if Junwei was walking on water. Seeing Junwei's technique, Zishi's eyes flashed with a hint of seriousness. However, there was also a thick blood aura behind him. At the same time, he gritted his teeth and shouted. Deliberately mystifying. I'd like to see what tricks you have. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 2306. Purple Snake shouted angrily as he looked at Junwei. Due to his hatred and fear of the three Pure Ones, Purple Snake was determined to kill Junwei in one fell swoop. Purple Snake was defeated by the three Pure Ones in the past. This time, Purple Snake would not be careless and would not give Junwei any chance. 3 against 1. Purple Snake had to seize this opportunity to kill Junwei again no matter what. As he spoke, the blood chi behind Purple Snake became thicker. At the same time, the blood chi gradually formed a huge blood-red python behind Purple Snake. Devour the heavens, Purple Snake shouted in a low voice. The blood-red python opened its bloody mouth and attacked Junwei. Facing the attack of the blood-red python, Junwei seemed to turn a deaf ear to it. A black lotus slowly formed under his feet. Junwei closed his eyes slightly and faced the attack of the blood-red python without dodging. Seeing that Junwei had no intention of dodging, the killing intent in Purple Snake's eyes became thicker. This guy was simply courting death. Under Purple Snake's cold gaze, the blood-red python swallowed Junwei in one gulp. Purple Snake sneered as he watched Junwei being swallowed by the blood-red python. Deliberately mystifying things. That's all there is to it. The blood-red python was Purple Snake's famous consummate skill. It was formed from his own blood chi. Once swallowed, even an Emperor Realm figure would be seriously injured. However, just as Purple Snake finished speaking, the blood-red python suddenly exploded. Then, a black lotus slowly appeared in Purple Snake's line of sight. He was indeed swallowed by the blood-red python, but Junwei was not hurt at all. This shocked Purple Snake. Purple Snake was naturally very clear about the power of the blood-colored python. However, it did not hurt Junwei at all. This was something that Purple Snake had never expected. It did not know how Junwei had resolved the attack of the blood-red python. However, just as the Purple Snake was still in shock, the black door slowly opened and Junwei's figure appeared once again. He calmly looked at the Purple Snake and said indifferently, "Evil cultivators are indeed extremely evil. This kind of method that goes against the heavenly Tao and tortures all living beings is truly despicable." With that, Junwei formed a seal with both hands. As the seal moved, the thick blood clouds that covered the sky seemed to be torn apart by some kind of force. Then, black lightning fell from the sky. Black lightning. Looking at the black lightning gathering in the sky, Purple Snake's face turned serious again. Previously, when Junwei displayed the three Pure One's incarnation, Purple Snake was already afraid. Now, when Junwei displayed the black lightning, Purple Snake's heart suddenly sank. The strength that Junwei displayed was much stronger than what Purple Snake had imagined. Just the three Pure One's incarnation was enough to make Purple Snake fearful. However, other than the three Pure One's incarnation, Junwei's other techniques were extremely extraordinary. Moreover, they all made Purple Snake feel extremely pressured. Whether it was the Black Lotus or the Black Lightning, the power that they contained made Purple Snake not dare to lower his guard. The Black Lightning gathered. At the same time, the Black Lotus that Junwuya was sitting on suddenly grew countless vines. They fiercely entangled Purple Snake, Chimei, and the white-haired old man. Facing the attack of so many black vines, Purple Snake and the other two naturally could not allow themselves to be captured. However, no matter how the three of them attacked, the black vines seemed to be endless. They kept entangling the three of them. While dealing with the attack of the black vines, countless black lightning in the sky also fiercely bombarded them at the same time. It could be said that they were attacked from the front and back. Facing such a fierce attack, even though Purple Snake and the other two had extraordinary cultivation and powerful battle strength, it was difficult for them to completely dodge these attacks. In order to avoid the attack of the black vines, Purple Snake had no choice but to choose to take the attack of the black lightning head-on. Although it was only a black lightning and could not directly injure Purple Snake still felt the blood in his body churning after being hit by the black lightning. Without a doubt, with the power of the black lightning, if there were a few more strikes, even Purple Snake would not be able to escape unscathed. The fear in his eyes had obviously turned into a trace of panic. Junwuya's strength had shocked Purple Snake and the other two. They were all on an Emperor-level mission, but Junwuya could fight 1 against 3 and not be at a disadvantage. He even had a slight advantage. If they did not experience this for themselves, who would believe it? While dealing with Junwuya's attack, they were also looking for an opportunity to counterattack. However, while they were attacking, Purple Snake and the other two did not realize that there were black refinements forming around them. Not long after, there were already hundreds of black refinements around the three of them. Unknowingly, Purple Snake and the other two were surrounded by black refinements. At this time, Junwuya also whispered softly, "Lotus Realm." Along with Junwuya's words, the surrounding hundreds of black flowers instantly emitted a black light. The dense black light seemed to have changed into a black curtain, covering the sky and covering the sun. In an instant, the entire Tianwu city was shrouded in it. If someone were to look from afar, they would realize that the entire Tianwu city was shrouded in darkness. It was as if there was a black object hanging upside down in the sky above Tianwu city. Trapped in the darkness, Purple Snake and the other two were stunned at first, but they quickly regained their senses. However, at this moment, Purple Snake immediately realized that his 5 senses had all been sealed. Even his divine sense had no effect. His 5 senses were useless, and his divine sense was useless. As a result, Purple Snake was like a blind man, unable to lock onto Junwuya's location. As an evil dominator, Junwuya could actually seal his 5 senses and divine sense. This made Purple Snake's heart freeze. Such a method was indeed unfathomable. Unable to determine Junwuya's location, if Junwuya were to launch a sneak attack, Purple Snake's situation would be very dangerous. Damn it, who is this person? Who would have thought that after so many years, he would encounter such a monstrous powerhouse right after breaking out of the seal? It was no exaggeration to say that Junwuya's strength was definitely the strongest person Purple Snake had ever met in his life. Even during the war between good and evil, among the numerous sovereigns that Purple Snake had fought, there was not a single one whose strength could be compared to Junwuya's. Purple Snake's eyes narrowed slightly as he carefully took precautions. He did not know where Junwuya was now, nor did he know where Junwuya would appear from and suddenly attack him. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 2307. Trapped in the darkness, Zishi did not dare to let his guard down. However, it was clearly not Zishi's character to be beaten up so passively. Although his fear of Junwuya continued to increase, Zishi had never thought of giving up without putting up a fight. Moreover, they had the advantage in numbers. Immediately, a purple light flashed across Zishi's eyes as he softly shouted, "Zishao." As he spoke, rays of purple light shot out from Zishi's body. These rays of purple light quickly pierced through the surrounding darkness as if they were trying to forcefully tear apart Junwei's lotus realm. Similarly, in the darkness, Junwei was not too surprised when he sensed Zizhao's actions. With Zizhao's strength, Junwei had already expected that the lotus realm would not be able to trap them for long. Moreover, Junwei's target was not Zishi. At this moment, Junwei and Luo Xing were in the darkness and they had already severely injured the evil dominator who was fighting with Luo Xing. Although they had missed the opportunity to kill him, they had indeed severely injured him. Following Zishi's attack, Qi Mei and the rest did not stay idle. With their combined strength, they finally broke through Junwei's lotus realm. However, when the darkness retreated, the scene before them caused Zishi and the rest's expressions to change abruptly. This was because they could see that one of the evil dominators was already severely injured. There were traces of blood on his body and his right hand was chopped off. The aura on his body was also extremely weak. Despicable. Glaring furiously at Junwei, the evil dominator shouted angrily. If not for Junwei's sudden sneak attack and Luo Xing's strong attack, he would not have been severely injured. Fortunately, he reacted quickly enough. Otherwise, he would not have been able to keep his life. Unfortunately, although he managed to keep his life, he no longer had the strength to continue fighting. This was something that anyone could see. Faced with this evil supremacy's angry roar, Junwei, Luo Xing, and Dao Xiong once again looked at Purple Snake and the others. They had already severely injured one of the evil supremacies. This time, there were only 4 people left on Purple Snake's side who still had the strength to fight. With a faint smile on his face, Junwei said faintly, "Let's get rid of one person first, then the pressure will be much less." As they spoke, both sides attacked again. Luo Xing and Dao Xiong were still fighting one-on-one while Junwei was facing Violet Snake and Qi Mei. From the previous 1-against-3 to the current 1-against-2, the pressure on Junwei was naturally reduced by a lot after one less person was eliminated. The 3 pure ones continued to display their power. One of them was holding back Qi Mei while the other 2 were fighting the Purple Snake. Facing 2 Junwei at the same time, the pressure on Violet Snake was obviously much greater than before. Junwei sneered and said, "Now it's much easier. I wonder if you can hold on against 2. His words were filled with mockery. Hearing this, Violet Snake's face turned gloomy. He had no intention of replying as he continuously cursed Junwei in his heart. If Junwei hadn't used the Lotus Realm to launch a sneak attack and severely injure one of them, Junwei wouldn't be so relaxed now. However, although it was 2 against 1, Violet Snake's strength was indeed inferior. At least until now, Junwei didn't have any advantage. Moreover, after fighting for so long, Violet Snake had also used many divine abilities. His methods were even better than Junwei's. If it was one-on-one, Junwei might be able to suppress Violet Snake. However, because there was still Qi Mei on the side, Junwei couldn't focus all of his energy on Violet Snake. Because of the battle between Junwei and the others, the surroundings of Tianwu City had long been destroyed. Even the ground had begun to fall apart. The entire Tianwu Road was shaking. It was obvious that the Tianwu Road was about to collapse. The battle between Junwei and the others was still going on. On the other side, Xiaochen and the others who were on the spatial spirit boat were already far away from the Tianwu Road. When they arrived at the entrance of the Flame Wind World, Xiaochen asked Dao Ju to stop the spatial spirit boat. He looked in the direction of the Tianwu Road with a serious expression. Who exactly are those people? Xiaochen didn't know what evil cultivators were, and he didn't know much about the battle between good and evil. However, the sudden appearance of 5 sovereigns made Xiaochen realize that things weren't so simple. After all, sovereigns were rare. The sudden appearance of 1 sovereign was already a rare thing, let alone 5 sovereigns. Thinking that Junwei and the others were fighting fiercely with the 5 sovereigns, Xiaochen couldn't help but worry. After all, Junwei and the others only had 3 people, while the other side had 5 sovereigns. They were obviously at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. He didn't know if Junwuya and the others could hold on. He wanted to go back and help, but Xiaochen also knew very well that a battle between sovereigns wasn't something he could intervene in at the moment. He originally thought that it would be a very simple trip to the Flame Wind world, but things had gotten out of his control. In Xiaochen's eyes, the Flame Wind world was now a little more mysterious. But no matter what, because of Junwuya and Luoxing's timely appearance, Xiaochen and the others had indeed successfully escaped danger. At least for now, Xiaochen and the others weren't in any danger. Next, they could only wait and see if Junwuya and the others could deal with the 5 evil masters. Xiaochen naturally didn't know that Junwuya was fighting 1 against 3. After 3 days and 3 nights of battle, more than half of the Tianwu road had been destroyed by Junwuya and the others. At this time, less than half of the original area of the Tianwu road was left. As for the other places, they had all fallen apart because of the battle between Junwuya and the others. At this time, Junwuya and the others were standing proudly in the void with bloodstains at the corners of their mouths. After 3 days and 3 nights of battle, there was still no clear victor between the two sides, especially Junwuya. After seriously injuring an evil master with a sneak attack, he was able to resist Purple Snake and Chi Mei for 3 days without falling into a disadvantageous position. At this time, both sides had consumed a lot of energy. Looking at Junwuya's back, Dao Xiong smiled bitterly. In this battle, Dao Xiong had truly witnessed Junwuya's terror. At the same time, he finally understood why Junwuya was known as the strongest person in the Great Thousand World. First, it was 1 against 3, then it was 1 against 2, and he still hadn't been defeated. Among all the emperors in the Great Thousand World, only Junwuya could achieve such a result. Dao Xiong wasn't the only one who admired Junwuya. Even Purple Snake, Chi Mei, and the other evil masters were the same. Looking at Junwuya, Purple Snake's breathing was slightly hurried as he said, "I didn't expect that after being sealed for so many years, there would be a master like you in the Great Thousand World. But remember, there will be a day when I will personally kill you." Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 2308. Zishi looked at Junwuya and said. In fact, at the beginning, Zishi was still thinking of ways to kill Junwuya no matter what because Zishi felt an extreme threat from him. However, after 3 days and 3 nights of battle, Purple Snake discovered that Junwuya's strength was much stronger than he had imagined. Even the Sovereign Realm Master who had defeated him during the battle between the righteous and evil paths was no match for Junwuya. Zishi knew that it would be very difficult for him to kill Junwuya. Moreover, Zishi no longer had the ability to kill Junwuya. Hence, Zishi immediately turned and left after saying that. Junwuya did not stop Zishi and the other evil sovereigns from leaving. In a flash, the 5 of them disappeared into the starry sky. However, just as they turned to leave, Zishi and Chi Mei both had blood flowing out from the corners of their mouths. Both of them were seriously injured. This was also the reason why Zishi left. Zishi naturally knew the condition of his body very well. After 3 days of intense battle, although Zishi seemed to be holding on, in reality, his injuries were not light. He no longer had the strength to fight with Junwuya. It wanted to kill Junwuya, but it was powerless to do so. That was why Purple Snake chose to retreat. There was nothing it could do about it. Zishi had a complicated look in his eyes. After meeting Junwuya, Zishi had an indescribable feeling in his heart. Junwuya's strength made Zishi feel powerless. At the very least, Zishi knew that his chances of winning against Junwuya were close to 0. As he watched Zishi and the other evil sovereigns leave, Junwuya spat out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, the 2 bodies formed by the 3 Pure One's incarnations also shattered. Like Zishi and Chi Mei, Junwuya was also an arrow at the end of its flight. Otherwise, Junwuya would not have let Zishi and the others leave so easily. 1 against 2, it's still too much. Junwuya's face instantly turned pale as he smiled bitterly. If it was 1 against 1, Jun Wuya was confident that he could keep Zishi. Unfortunately, 1 against 2, Jun Wuya was also under a lot of pressure. It was not easy for him to hold on until now. Seeing Jun Wuya spit out blood, Luo Xing naturally went forward to support Jun Wuya. She asked with concern, "How are you? Are you all right?" "I'm fine. I just need to rest for a while." Jun Wuya smiled bitterly when he heard that. Then, Jun Wuya and the other 2 also left and rushed to the Great Thousand World. Now that Jun Wuya was seriously injured, Dao Xiong and Luo Xing were not in good condition, and the sovereigns were not around. The Flaming Wind Realm was obviously not a place to stay for long. They planned to leave the Flame Wind World first and think about it later. Under Luo Xing's care, the 3 of them headed towards the spatial tunnel. However, along the way, Dao Xiong curiously sized up Jun Wuya. He hesitated for a while before asking, "Brother Wuya, what realm are you at now? Could it be that you've already..." He could not remember how many years it had been since he last saw Jun Wuya in action. This time, Jun Wuya did not hold back at all. Because of this, Dao Xiong was shocked by Jun Wuya's combat strength. Facing 2 evil sovereigns at the same time, and in the end, both sides were injured. This shocked Dao Xiong. All along, Dao Xiong thought that even though Jun Wuya was the strongest in the Great Thousand Worlds, no matter how strong he was, there should be a limit to his strength. At least, he should not be too far behind sovereigns. But this time, after witnessing Jun Wuya's true combat strength, Dao Xiong realized that he was completely wrong. Dao Xiong had always had a doubt in his heart. Could Jun Wuya have touched the level after sovereigns? Sovereigns had always been the strongest in the Great Thousand Worlds, and no one had ever heard of anyone breaking through to the sovereigns level. However, after so many years, who could be sure that sovereigns were the end of the martial way? Therefore, generations of sovereigns had constantly explored the level after sovereigns. Although no one had succeeded so far, and there was no evidence to prove that there were stronger existences after sovereigns, this did not hinder people's curiosity and exploration. Could it be that Jun Wuya was the first person in history to succeed? After voicing his doubts, Dao Xiong looked at Jun Wuya with some apprehension. This result was too important for Dao Xiong and the other sovereigns. As sovereigns, there were not many things that could attract their attention, and whether there was a higher level of existence after the sovereigns was obviously the most important thing for all sovereigns. Even Luo Xing looked at Jun Wuya expectantly. Under their gazes, Jun Wuya shook his head helplessly. Seeing this, Dao Xiong and Luo Xing felt a little depressed. It turned out that Jun Wuya had not succeeded. However, after thinking about it, the 2 of them felt relieved. Yes, the existence after sovereigns was the answer that generations of sovereigns had been searching for. If it could be solved so easily, it would be strange. Jun Wuya's cultivation was still at the Emperor realm, which made Dao Xiong secretly heave a sigh of relief. Otherwise, he would have really suffered a blow. However, Jun Wuya's next words made Dao Xiong feel as if he had been struck by lightning. He was stunned on the spot. "I don't have an accurate answer now, but I have touched on something, but I can't explain it clearly. If I have to say, it should be considered as half a step." He had already surpassed the sovereigns by half a step, but he had not really been able to tear apart the secret behind the sovereigns. Hearing this, Dao Xiong was stunned. After a long while, he looked at Jun Wuya with a complicated expression. "Brother Wuya, you've really kept us in the dark for a long time." Dao Xiong smiled helplessly. In response, Jun Wuya also shook his head slightly. He had indeed taken half a step, but the remaining half a step made Jun Wuya feel helpless. No matter how hard he tried, it seemed that he could not cross this half a step. It was like a natural moat, blocking Jun Wuya's path forward. Of course, Dao Xiong and Luo Xing did not understand these things, so Jun Wuya did not say it out loud. Seeing that Jun Wuya did not speak, Dao Xiong continued, "Since you have such strength, why did you, when you faced Tao Ming?" The meaning of Dao Xiong's words was obvious. Jun Wuya's strength was obviously enough to defeat Tao Ming, or even kill him directly. However, during the several exchanges with Tao Ming, Junwuya did not do so. It could even be said that he was deliberately hiding his strength. In response to Dao Xiong's question, Junwuya smiled and said, "You know that my ambition does not lie here, and I don't have any intention of unifying the vast thousand world. Moreover, if I really did that, it would not be good for Qin'er. After all, a person's growth needs to be tempered. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." End of chapter. Chapter 2309. With Junwuya's strength, he could easily destroy the Kadian sect. It could even be said that in the entire Great Thousand World, there was probably no emperor who could contend with him. However, in the previous battle with the Kadian sect, Junwuya did not reveal his true strength. The reason was that Junwuya did not want Xiaochen to rely on him too much. Imagine, if Junwuya had directly killed Tao Ming from the start, then, would the sword sect really be able to grow? At that time, would the strength of the entire sword sect depend on Junwuya's own strength? And would such strength be really strong? Junwuya hoped that Xiaochen could make the sword sect really strong through his own efforts, and not rely on himself blindly. Moreover, with Junwuya's character, he was not too interested in dominating, so he would not have been wandering around alone for so many years. Hearing Junwuya's words, Dao Xiong smiled helplessly, but did not say anything more. The three of them directly entered the space passage and returned to the Great Thousand World. At the same time that Junwuya and the other two returned to the Great Thousand World, on the other side, Zishi and the other four returned to the entrance of the Sealed Land. At this time, they looked at the many evil cultivators in the Sealed Land, and a cold expression appeared on their faces. Since the Sealed Land had been broken, Zishi and the other four knew that the upcoming battle with the Great Thousand World's righteous faction was obviously unavoidable. Tenzu would definitely not allow their existence. Therefore, this battle was unavoidable. It was either life or death. Looking at the many evil cultivators who had awakened, Zishi's eyes flashed coldly. "Let's take down the Flaming Wind World first." Since the battle with the Great Thousand World was inevitable, Zishi did not have the slightest intention of avoiding it. Hearing his words, Qi Mei and the others nodded slightly. In an instant, from the Sealed Land, countless evil cultivators soared into the sky, and the Flaming Wind World had obviously attracted its darkest time. The Lingyue continent was the territory of the Wood Spirit sect. As one of the four major forces in the Flame Wind realm, the Wood Spirit sect was a powerful force that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years. For a long time, the Wood Spirit sect had firmly occupied the Lingyue continent. However, on this day, there was a sudden surge of blood qi on the Lingyue continent. Moreover, countless evil cultivators madly entered the Lingyue continent. In just one day, they had slaughtered dozens of cities and sections. The Wood Spirit sect naturally received the news of the large-scale invasion of evil cultivators. As the overlord of the Spirit U continent, the Wood Spirit sect naturally couldn't sit idly by. At this moment, in the main hall of the Wood Spirit sect, the various ancestors and upper echelons of the Wood Spirit sect were gathered together. Everyone's expression was somewhat solemn, and one of the ancestors even said in a deep voice, "Where did these people come from? His methods are so cruel. Everywhere he passes, blood flows like a river." They didn't know about the evil cultivators, but according to the information sent back, these martial artists who suddenly appeared were all extremely cold-blooded. Regardless of whether they were male or female, old or young, whether they were martial artists or not, they simply left no survivors wherever they passed. Moreover, these evil cultivators who suddenly appeared were all very powerful. Ordinary forces couldn't stop them at all. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before the Lingyue continent would be slaughtered. Therefore, the Wood Spirit sect must act as soon as possible to stop these evil cultivators who suddenly appeared. Hearing this ancestor's words, the other ancestors also nodded in agreement. No matter who these people are, we can't let them slaughter like this on the Lingyue continent. We must stop them. That's right. In just one day, dozens of cities have already fallen. We can't hesitate anymore. The ancestors of the Wood Spirit sect all decided to take action. However, just as they were talking, a sneer suddenly sounded in the main hall. I think you'd better worry more about yourselves now. The sudden voice made the faces of the ancestors of the Wood Spirit sect in the main hall turn serious. They all stood up and looked at the center of the main hall, where two figures slowly emerged. Looking at the two people who suddenly appeared, an ancestor of the Wood Spirit sect shouted in a deep voice, "Who are you?" It was a man and a woman. They were Purple Snake and Chi Mei. As the evil dominator, there was nothing strange about the two of them easily entering the main hall of the Wood Spirit sect. Although the two of them were seriously injured after the battle with Junwuya, these ancestors of the Wood Spirit sect couldn't be compared to them. It was simply too easy to deal with them. Facing the sudden appearance of Purple Snake and Chi Mei, the higher-ups of the Wood Spirit sect all looked serious. They didn't notice their existence at all before. Facing the question of the Wood Spirit sect's elder, Chi Mei sneered and said, "What a temper. We're the ones who will destroy you." Chi Mei's charm stunned the higher-ups of the Wood Spirit sect. At this moment, Purple Snake coldly said. Then, Chi Mei made her move. The power of charm spread out. Instantly, the higher-ups of the Wood Spirit sect, including the ancestors, all walked towards Chi Mei with infatuated expressions. Perhaps even they didn't know what they were doing. They only knew that there was an impulse in their hearts that made them want to get closer to Chi Mei. They wanted to obtain this beautiful woman. With Chi Mei's cultivation and the art of seduction that she cultivated, the upper echelons of the Wood Spirit sect had no power to resist her. Seeing these people walking towards Chi Mei in a daze, she was not surprised at all. Moreover, he seemed to know what was going to happen next. Thus, he turned around and left the hall. Before he left, he only left a sentence, "Don't go overboard. Hurry up." Got it. Brother Purple Snake, why don't you stay with me? Hearing this, Chi Mei smiled charmingly and threw a seductive glance at Purple Snake. However, Purple Snake left without looking back. I still want to live for 2 more years. Purple Snake was naturally clear about Chi Mei's methods. This woman looked charming and seductive, but in reality, she was extremely dangerous. Having fun with her was indeed a matter of life and death. Purple Snake left the main hall without hesitation. Just as Purple Snake left the main hall, a burst of joyous sounds came from the main hall. Just by listening to the sounds, it wasn't hard to guess what kind of erotic scene was playing out in the main hall. Purple Snake didn't stay outside the main hall for long. He came to the main square of the Wood Spirit sect. Looking at the many disciples of the Wood Spirit sect in the main square, he softly shouted. Zishao. Deep condolences to the martyrs who fought against the plague and our fallen comrades. May the dead rest in peace. May the living grow stronger. May the motherland prosper. End of chapter. Chapter 23:10. On the main square, many disciples of the Wood Spirit sect came and went. Many of them were stunned by the sudden appearance of Purple Snake. They obviously did not notice when Purple Snake appeared here. It made sense. Even the ancestors of the Wood Spirit sect did not notice the arrival of Purple Snake and Chi Mei, let alone these disciples. However, before they could react, rays of purple light shot out from the Purple Snake's body. As the purple light streaked across the sky, the entire Wood Spirit sect turned into a living hell. Purple rain began to fall from the sky. Anything that came into contact with the rain, regardless of whether it was a person or a building, would be instantly corroded and turned into thick blood chi that was devoured by Purple Snake. Cries and shouts quickly spread throughout the Wood Spirit sect. However, Purple Snake's expression did not change at all. Annihilating a small Wood Spirit sect was nothing to Purple Snake. In the past, the entire Great Thousand World was almost annihilated by Purple Snake and the other evil cultivators, let alone a small Wood Spirit sect. Without any resistance, the Wood Spirit sect was completely annihilated by Purple Snake. At the same time, Chi Mei also slowly walked out of the main hall. Looking at the unnatural redness on both of them, Purple Snake curled his lips and said helplessly, "Are you satisfied now? What's there to be satisfied about a bunch of old fellows?" Chimay smiled charmingly. No one saw what happened in the main hall. However, if someone entered the main hall at this time, they would realize that the upper echelons of the Wood Spirit sect, including the ancestors, had all turned into dried corpses. It was as if their blood essence had been sucked dry. However, although they were dead, there was still a smile on each of their faces. This was really like the saying, even if you die under a peony, you will still be a romantic ghost. Just like that, the Wood Spirit sect was easily annihilated by Purple Snake and Chimay. Not only the Wood Spirit sect, but the other 3 continents were also under attack by evil cultivators. In the face of powerful evil cultivators, the Flaming Wind world was basically defenseless. Soon, the Flaming Wind world completely fell, and this place became the world of evil cultivators. No one could stop what was happening in the Flaming Wind realm, because Junwuya and the other sovereigns were all gathered in the Western Liang Plains. On the Western Liang Plains, the experts from various sects in the Great Thousand World continued to gather. Looking from afar, the vast Western Liang Plains was bustling with noise and excitement, with countless simple wooden houses connected together. The Western Liang Plain was the only entrance to the Fiery Wind boundary. Therefore, whether it was the Great Thousand World or the evil cultivators who wanted to enter the Great Thousand World, they had to pass through the Western Liang Plain. Those who were well aware of the situation also knew that it was impossible for the 10 Great Ling Tian sects to be a match for these heretic cultivators. Therefore, the Great Thousand World, under the leadership of the 10 Great Ling Tian sects, temporarily put aside their former enmity and worked together. No matter what, the evil cultivators were the biggest threat to the Great Thousand World. If they did not get rid of this threat, the entire Great Thousand World would probably be massacred. Everyone knew which was more important. Therefore, even Li Xiao and Yin Litian, who had a blood feud with each other, chose to work together for the time being. Only by working together could they contend against the evil cultivators. Moreover, the Fiery Wind boundary was only one of the sealed places. According to Tenzu, there were 3 other sealed places like the Fiery Wind boundary. The Great Thousand World was on high alert. On this day, Junwuya and the other 2 successfully broke through the space passage and returned to the Great Thousand World. Following the return of Junwuya and the other 2, Xiaochen and the others, who were the first to return to the Great Thousand World, naturally went to visit them. In a simple wooden house, Xiaochen saw Junwuya. Seeing Junwuya's pale face, Xiaochen asked with concern, "Master, are you all right?" "I'm fine. I just need to recuperate for a while," Junwuya said with a smile. The injuries on his body had not yet healed, but there was no danger to his life. After chatting for a while, Junwuya had to leave for the time being because of the other emperor's summons. In front of the space passage, there was a huge palace floating in the air. It could be said that this was the temporary command center. All the emperor's meetings were held here. With the arrival of Junwuya, all the sovereigns in the Great Thousand World were present. There were a total of 10 of them. Of course, young geniuses like Xiaochen and the others who had just ascended to the top were also present. However, at this time, they could only listen from the side. "Brother Wuya, the 3 of you have been to the Flaming Wind realm. Tell us about the situation there first." Li Xiao was the first to speak. He looked at Junwuya and said. Those present were only Xiaochen, Junwuya, and the other 2 who had been to the Flaming Wind realm. Hearing this, Junwuya did not hide anything and truthfully told everyone about the situation in the Flaming Wind realm. However, at the end, Junwuya specially emphasized one thing. The evil sovereigns are very strong. There are 5 evil sovereigns in the Flaming Wind realm alone. If the other 2 sealed places are also broken, then the pressure on us will be much greater. There were a total of 5 evil sovereigns sealed in the Flaming Wind realm. After fighting with them, Junwuya also admitted that the 5 evil sovereigns were very strong and should not be underestimated. However, compared to the Flaming Wind realm, Junwuya was more worried about the situation in the other 2 sealed places. This was because if it was just the Flaming Wind realm, the power of the entire Great Thousand World could directly destroy it. However, if the other two sealed places were also broken, then the pressure that the Great Thousand World had to face would be even greater. In response to Junhui's worries, the other emperors present nodded slightly in agreement. Indeed, according to Junhui, the evil path cultivators sealed in the Flaming Wind realm were not invincible to the Great Thousand World. The real worry was the other two sealed places. But now, the other two sealed places have not appeared yet. We don't even have a clue. What should we do? The Flaming Wind realm had appeared, but there were no clues about the other two sealed places. The emperors also did not know where the other two sealed places were, so there was no way to guard against them. I think we should attack the Flaming Wind realm first. No matter what, we should destroy the Flaming Wind realm first. This can be considered as nipping the danger in the bud. After all, if we destroy the Flaming Wind realm, even if the other two sealed places appear in the future, the pressure on us will be much less. At this time, Dan Qingyang slowly opened his mouth and said, "Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." End of chapter. Chapter 23:11. From Tenzu's words, everyone knew that there were a total of 3 sealed places, and the Flaming Wind realm was only one of them. Now, the other 2 sealed places had not yet appeared, so there was no way to take action even if they wanted to. Therefore, Dan Qingyang's idea was very simple. He wanted to destroy the evil path cultivators in the Flaming Wind realm before the other 2 sealed places appeared. No matter how one looked at it, destroying the evil path cultivators in the Flaming Wind realm would be a good thing for the vast Thousand World. Even if the other 2 sealed places appeared in the future, the pressure on the vast Thousand World would be greatly reduced. Hearing Dan Qingyang's words, the rest of the sovereigns nodded slightly. They all felt that Dan Qingyang was right. However, just as everyone agreed with Dan Qingyang's proposal, a voice suddenly sounded out of nowhere. "I don't think it's possible." Along with the voice, a white-haired old man in white robes appeared in the hall. Seeing the old man appear, the sovereigns present were not too surprised. The old man was Tenzu of the vast Thousand World. In addition to the sovereigns, it was the first time that Xiao Chen and the others had seen Tenzu of the vast Thousand World. He was known as the ancestor of all the will of the heavenly way. With the appearance of Tenzu, a hint of doubt flashed in the eyes of the sovereigns. This was because Tenzu had clearly indicated that Dan Qingyang's idea was not feasible. Tenzu was obviously the most knowledgeable about the sealed places. After all, these 3 sealed places were actually created by Tenzu. After taking his seat, Tenzu apparently guessed the thoughts of the people present and said faintly, "Dan Qingyang's idea is good, but there's not enough time." Hearing Tenzu's words, everyone looked at each other. Then, Dao Xiong said in a deep voice, "So, the other 2 sealed places are about to appear?" There was not enough time. If that was the case, there was only one explanation. The seals of the other 2 sealed places could not hold on for too long. In response, Tenzu nodded and said, "That's right. The other 2 sealed places can only hold on for another 5 days at most. Can we destroy the Flaming Wind realm in 5 days?" It was clearly impossible to eliminate all the evil path cultivators in the Flame Wind realm in 5 days. The time was too short. It was simply impossible. The heavenly ancestor brought a piece of bad news. At the same time, in the Great Thousand World, 2 space passageways were slowly forming in the Saber Mansion and Yu Mansion. Needless to say, these 2 space passageways led to the other 2 sealed places. The situation was much more serious than they had imagined. Even Tenzu had a grave expression on his face. The 3 sealed places had been broken one after another. As a result, the Great Thousand World had once again attracted the battle between good and evil, which had caused the heavens and earth to change color. Although the Great Thousand World had won the previous battle and suppressed many evil sovereigns, they had paid a heavy price. This time, they were faced with the destruction of the three great sealed lands, and the battle between the good and evil had begun once again. One could imagine how everyone was feeling. Following the news brought by the Sky Clan, the atmosphere in the hall became somewhat oppressive. Everyone fell silent. Now, it seemed that there was no way to resolve the situation before them. After a long silence, Junwuya finally spoke. Now that things have come to this, it's no longer a problem that can be solved with strategies. We can only fight head-on. Everyone once again discussed countermeasures, but now it seemed that the so-called countermeasures and strategies were useless. Facing the evil path cultivators in the three sealed places, they could only fight head-on. With that, Junwuya turned to look at Tenzu and asked calmly, "Can you confirm the number of evil masters?" The Flaming Wind Realm had 5 evil masters. What about the remaining 2 sealed places? How many evil masters were there? First, they had to confirm the number of evil masters. In the face of Junwuya's question, Tenzu said in a deep voice, "Back then, there were a total of 16 evil masters who were sealed. If I'm not mistaken, these evil masters should still be alive." 16 evil masters were sealed. With such a number, even the emperors present could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. One had to know that there were only 10 emperors in the Great Thousand World. However, the number of evil masters in the 3 sealed places had reached 16, which was 6 more than the Great Thousand World. Their faces became increasingly ugly. Even Xiao Chen and the others were the same. Although Xiao Chen and the others did not have the right to speak in such an occasion, everyone could hear that the situation in the Great Thousand World was very dangerous. Needless to say, everyone understood what it meant to have an additional 6 evil lords. Let alone 6 evil lords, even 1 evil lord was enough to easily annihilate a Ling Tian sect if there was no Emperor Venerable to stop him. Moreover, there were 6 evil masters. Such a difference in numbers was almost overwhelming. Frowning slightly, Xiao Chen constantly weighed the strength of the 2 sides in his heart. However, based on the current situation, the Great Thousand World did not seem to have the slightest chance of winning at all. In terms of the highest battle strength, the difference between the emperors and the evil masters was as big as 6 people. Such a difference was not something that could be made up by risking their lives. The situation was getting more and more dangerous. Not only Xiao Chen, but Dao Ju, Xiao Xiao, Li Chun, Yin Sheng, and the others also looked solemn. At this moment, everyone had discovered the hatred between them. After all, this was a matter of great importance to the survival of the entire Great Thousand World. As Xiao Chen and the others, they naturally knew what was more important and what was more important. However, compared to Xiao Chen and the others who were nervous, Junwuya and the other emperors did not have much of a change in expression after hearing this. Compared to Xiao Chen and the others who were young, Junwuya and the other emperors were obviously much more mature. Moreover, they knew more about the Great Thousand World. After all, Xiao Chen and the others were too young and did not have a thorough understanding of many secrets of the Great Thousand World. The Great Thousand World had existed for so many years, so there were obviously many things that the world did not know. There were many secrets hidden in the Great Thousand World, and this was also a level that ordinary people could not come into contact with. However, Junwuya and the others knew this very well. "It seems that we can only completely gather the strength of the Great Thousand World," Junwuya said faintly with a sigh. Hearing Junwuya's words, Xiao Chen and the others were full of doubts. Gather the strength of the Great Thousand World? Could it be that the people present at this time did not represent the strength of the entire Great Thousand World? Please add, please vote, please recommend. End of chapter. Chapter 23:12. Xiao Chen and the others naturally did not understand Junwuya's words, but Dan Xingyang smiled and said, "That's the only way." In the face of the threat of the evil warriors, the Great Thousand World obviously could not hold back anymore. Seeing this, Tenzo also said in a deep voice, "In that case, let's act as soon as possible. In 5 days at most, the 3 sealed places will be completely broken. With the decision made, everyone left one after another. Xiaochen followed Junwuya all the way back to his residence. From the conversation between the emperors just now, Xiaochen had guessed something. Seeing that Xiaochen was hesitant to speak, Junwuya smiled and said, "Master is going out. Are you going to look for someone?" Xiaochen asked with a smile. In the face of Xiaochen's inquiry, Junwuya did not hide anything and said indifferently, "Well, the Great Thousand World has existed for so many years, so naturally, it can't be as simple as it seems on the surface. Obviously, we are not the only emperors. There are also some emperors who are not interested in fame, wealth, and power. They are willing to live in seclusion and focus on comprehending the martial way, so very few people know of their existence." In addition to Junwuya and the other emperors, there were naturally other emperors in the Great Thousand World, but because of their indifferent nature, very few people knew about them. Hearing this, Xiaochen nodded. In fact, this was not surprising. After all, emperors had a very long lifespan and were extremely difficult to kill. After so many years, it was naturally impossible for the Great Thousand World to only have 10 emperors. Seeing that Xiaochen did not look too surprised, Junwuya also nodded with a smile, but then he sighed inwardly, "But even so, these old guys have no fixed residence, and some even wander around the world. It's not easy to find them." There were indeed many emperors in the Great Thousand World. According to Junwuya's estimation, there were at least 20 of them. However, it was almost impossible to find all of them, because many of them were not even in the Great Thousand World, so it was impossible to find them. Just like when Junwuya wandered around the Great Thousand World, who would know the whereabouts of Junwuya? Unless he showed himself, it would be difficult to find him. In this regard, Xiaochen also nodded in agreement, but Xiaochen certainly could not help in this matter, so he did not say much. Seeing this, Junwuya said a few words to Xiaochen, then left alone. As for where he went, Xiaochen did not ask. Along the way back to his residence, Qin Shuru and the other girls had not yet returned to the sword sect because of time constraints. Taking advantage of this time, Xiaochen also intended to ask Sangxing to arrange for the girls to return to the sword sect. After all, Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao were still here, and Xiaochen certainly could not let them stay at the front line. While Xiaochen was dealing with the girls, on the other side, Junwuya soon arrived at the border of the Yu mansion. In the periphery of a mountain range, in a very ordinary small mountain village, Junwuya walked slowly. Along the way, he came to the front of a thatched hut. At this time, Wu Qiangjin saw a thin old man wearing a straw hat with his head lowered, concentrating on weaving a straw hat. Seeing this old man, Junwuya showed a faint smile on his face and said, "How much is the straw hat?" Hearing this, the old man said without raising his head, 5 copper coins for one." Hearing this, Junwuya immediately laughed loudly and said, "Ha! How can the straw hat of the dignified Qingyuan emperor be sold for only 5 copper coins?" Junwuya scolded with a smile. In this regard, the old man also raised his head. Seeing Junwuya, the old man was not surprised at all, and also scolded with a smile, "Old man, how can you be in the mood to look for me? Is the mess in Swords Gate not enough for you to deal with?" Compared to Junwuya, the old man was the polar opposite. His face was dry and wrinkled, and his eyes were cloudy. No matter how one looked at him, he looked like an ordinary farmer. Even the people in this small mountain village didn't know that the old man in front of them was actually an emperor-level mission taker. Everyone thought that this old man was just an ordinary person who relied on his skill in weaving straw hats to make a living. Junwuya consciously came to the old man's side and sat down. He did not beat around the bush and said directly, "I'm here to ask for your help." "Oh? Old man, what else do you need my help with? Let me say this first, I won't interfere in the affairs of the Great Thousand World, and I won't do anything." Hearing this, the old man smiled. The old man was an emperor who lived in seclusion and never interfered in the affairs of the Great Thousand World. Junwuya had long known about this. Hearing this, Junwuya said in a deep voice, "No, you must take action in this matter because it concerns the entire Great Thousand World." Then, Junwei truthfully told the old man about the evil warriors and the 3 sealed places. Hearing Junwei's words, the old man's face changed slightly, and he said after a moment of silence, "If that's the case, it seems like this old man has no reason to refuse. What do you think?" Hearing this, Junwei asked, Okay, I'll go with you. Since this matter concerns the entire Great Thousand World, this old man can't refuse even if I have 10,000 reasons. The old man knew the severity of the matter, so he readily agreed to Junwei's request. Seeing this, Junwei smiled and said, "That's right. If it's not enough, we'll have to look for others." Junwei's side was very smooth. On the other side, Dan Qingyang, like Junwei, also went out to look for those old monsters who lived in seclusion. At this time, in a small shop in the 10,000 Weapon residence, Dan Qingyang and a fat middle-aged man who looked like a profiteer were sitting opposite each other. Junwei, who had already told the fat man about the evil path cultivators, spoke up. "I've already said that you can't refuse this matter. Otherwise, don't expect me to provide you with any pills in the future." Obviously, this fat middle-aged man was also a venerable emperor, and the shop he opened was an official shop that sold all kinds of pills. However, there was nothing strange about this medicine shop, and the pills it sold were very ordinary. They were all very common pills on the market. At this time, when he heard Junwei's words, the fat man immediately said with dissatisfaction, "You actually used this to threaten me. Do you think I don't know how to refine pills?" Obviously, the fat man was very unhappy with Dan Qingyang's threat. However, after a pause, the fat man's eyes flashed and he said, "However, I agree to this matter. No matter what, this matter concerns the entire Great Thousand World." As he spoke, the fat man called over the only waiter in the shop and said indifferently, "I have to go out for some matters. I'll leave the shop to you. You have to look after it for me. If anything happens in the shop, I'll hold you responsible. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." End of this chapter. Chapter 23:13. No matter how one looked at him, the fat man looked like a businessman who only cared about profits. Dan Qingyang could only smile helplessly. Who would have thought that the shopkeeper of an extremely ordinary medicine shop in this medium-sized city would be an emperor-level character? No matter how one looked at him, the fat man looked like a businessman who only cared about profits. Dan Qingyang could only smile helplessly. Who would have thought that the shopkeeper of an extremely ordinary medicine shop in this medium-sized city would be an emperor-level character? Even the waiter probably did not expect that the boss he had followed for so many years would be an emperor-level character standing at the peak of the Great Thousand World. After giving his instructions, the fat man turned to look at Dan Qingyang and said, "Let's go, what are you waiting for?" At the invitation of Junwei and the others, the reclusive sovereigns came out one after another. Of course, there were also those who refused, but after a few days of hard work, they managed to invite 5 reclusive sovereigns to come out. Originally, they should have been able to invite more emperors, but firstly, they did not know where some of them were, and secondly, some of them were not willing to pay attention to these matters at all. Therefore, it was already very good that 5 people were willing to help. They directly returned to the Western Liang Plains in the Sword Mansion. Junwei was accompanied by 3 emperors, while Dan Qingyang was accompanied by the fat man. As for the old ancestor of the Talisman sect, he had also found a reclusive emperor-level character. There were a total of 5 people. When they arrived at the Western Liang Plains station, Dao Xiong, Luo Xing, and the other emperors naturally came out to welcome them in the main hall. As emperors, they had more or less interacted with each other. It was just that they were not familiar with each other. After greeting each other, Junwei and the others told the 5 reclusive emperors about the situation. After hearing Junwei and the others' words, the thin old man who came with Junwei looked at the black hole leading to the Flame Wind Realm in the distance and said after a moment of silence, "Evil warriors, is there any movement in the other 2 sealed places?" "There is indeed a space passage forming, but it hasn't taken shape yet. Junwuya replied faintly. Upon hearing Junwuya's words, the skinny old man did not say anything else. Now, the destruction of the sealed land was inevitable. Even if all the sovereigns joined forces, there was no way to stop it. They could only wait to fight the evil warriors head-on. With the addition of 5 more reclusive sovereigns, the number of sovereigns on both sides was now completely equal. Although the vast Thousand Worlds side only had 15 sovereigns, which seemed to be one less than the Evil Path side, it should not be forgotten that Tenza's combat strength was not inferior to any of the sovereigns. The vast Thousand Worlds side was ready for battle. The arrival of the 5 sovereigns naturally had a great effect on the morale of the vast Thousand Worlds side. At this time, in Xiao Chen's residence, Qin Shuru and Baihua Fairy had already returned to the Sword Sect. However, Tianyue, Guling Yao, and Hongxiu refused to go back. Qin Shuru and Baihua Fairy only agreed to return to the Sword Sect because of Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao. Tianyue and the other 2 girls stayed with Xiao Chen. Regarding this, although Xiao Chen was helpless, he could only nod and agree. At this time, the 4 of them were sitting in a circle in the courtyard. Today, Xiao Chen received a message from Xin Yuanling and Wang Qing. The 2 of them had already come out of seclusion and had successfully broken through to the End Realm. After learning about the Evil Path, the 2 of them should be on their way to the Xiliang Plains. Xiao Chen already knew that Junwuya and the others had returned. He also knew that Junwuya and the others had found 5 reclusive sovereigns. Facing the hidden strength of the vast Thousand World, Xiao Chen did not have much of a change in his heart. However, regarding the Evil Path side, Xiao Chen was a little puzzled. After all, normal time had passed, and the Flame Wind world seemed to have regained its peace. Furthermore, none of the Evil Path's martial artists had come through the space channel to the vast Thousand World. A few days had passed. What were these Evil Path's martial artists thinking? Or were they plotting something? This was what Xiao Chen was most concerned about at this time. Xiao Chen felt that the Evil Path's martial artists would definitely not remain calm. They must be plotting something. Xiao Chen's guess was not wrong. In the Flame Wind world, the entire Flame Wind world was now completely under the control of Purple Snake and the other 4. There were also many Evil Path's martial artists guarding the space channel. However, Purple Snake and the other 4 did not seem to be in a hurry to attack the vast Thousand World. A few days passed, and Purple Snake and the others remained in the sealed area. At this time, Purple Snake and the other 4 sat together on a mountain peak in the center of the sealed area. A huge blood-red light gate slowly formed in the middle of the 5 of them. Purple Snake and the others had been here for a few days. Their goal was to break through the 3 sealed areas. Although so much time had passed, Purple Snake and the others did not dare to be careless about the strength of the vast Thousand World. After all, Purple Snake and the others had already lost once in the battle between the good and evil. Hence, Purple Snake and the others were clearly more cautious this time. Furthermore, after the incident with Junwuya, Purple Snake and the others were very clear that after so many years, the martial way of the vast Thousand World had not deteriorated. Instead, it had become more prosperous, perhaps even stronger than before. In the face of such a powerful vast Thousand World, if Purple Snake and the others were to act rashly, it would obviously end in failure. Hence, Purple Snake and the others were very careful this time. Breaking through the 3 sealed areas was only the first step. After a few days, the blood-red light gate finally formed completely. Along with the formation of the blood-red light gate, a monstrous bloody aura also spread out from the blood-red light gate. Sensing the appearance of this bloody aura, Shi and the other 4 slowly opened their eyes. Their gazes were calm as they looked at the blood-colored light door. Under the gazes of the 5 people, the ragged evil sovereigns slowly passed through the blood-colored light door and stepped into the Flame Wind world. The first to appear was a red-haired old man. The old man was tall and strong. The moment he appeared, he looked at Purple Snake and smiled. "Purple Snake, I didn't expect that you would be the first to break the seal." This old man was obviously an evil sovereign. Hearing his words, Purple Snake said indifferently, "Cut the crap. we still have important matters to attend to. As his voice fell, a total of 11 evil sovereigns walked out from the blood-red light gate. At the same time, the evil sovereigns in the other 2 sealed areas were also revived by the evil sovereigns using the blood refinement technique. The evil sovereign army quickly stepped into the flame wind world. As such, the evil sovereigns in the 3 sealed areas all gathered in the flame wind world. The flame wind world had become the true headquarters of the evil sovereigns. As for the other 2 sealed areas, they were obviously just empty shells. A day later, in the main hall of the Wood Spirit sect, 16 evil sovereigns sat together. One of them looked at Purple Snake and asked, "Purple Snake, are you really going to do this? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." End of chapter. Chapter 23:14. Zishi, do you really want to do this? In the main hall of the Wood Spirit sect, the 16 evil sovereigns sat together, and one of them asked Zishi with a serious expression. Zishi, do you really want to do this? In the main hall of the Wood Spirit sect, the 16 evil sovereigns sat together, and one of them asked Zishi with a serious expression. In response to this person's question, Zishi nodded and said, "That's right. This is the only way for us to have a chance of winning." Zishi, aren't you being too nervous? Hearing this, another evil sovereign spoke up. In the face of their doubts, Zishi's expression turned cold, and she snorted coldly. I'm not nervous. I'm just speaking the truth. The Great Thousand World cannot be underestimated. Why did we lose the battle between the good and evil back then? It was because we underestimated our enemy. This time, we finally broke the seal. If we continue to underestimate the Great Thousand World, who can guarantee that we won't repeat the same mistakes? Furthermore, I can tell you very clearly that after so many years, the martial way in the Great Thousand World has become more prosperous. Its strength is even greater than during the previous battle. At this point, Violet Snake paused and slowly swept his gaze across everyone. Facing Violet Snake's serious gaze, all the evil sovereigns present fell into silence. At this moment, Violet Snake took a deep breath and said, "Don't worry. Furthermore, a few days ago, Chi-Mei and I fought with the sovereigns of the Great Thousand World. It's not an exaggeration to say that the sovereigns of the Great Thousand World are very strong, especially one of them. He fought with me and Chi-Mei alone without losing. Chi-Mei and the others can testify to this. I'm not exaggerating at all." Zishi couldn't help but think of Junhui's figure. Very strong, indeed very strong. Even as an enemy, Zishi had to admit Junhui's strength. Hearing Zishi's words, the expressions of the other sovereigns changed. With Zishi's character, they all knew that this matter shouldn't be false. Furthermore, Chi-Mei and the others could testify. Even though it was 2 against 1, Violet Snake and Chi-Mei were still unable to defeat him. In that case, none of the evil sovereigns present would be a match for Junhui in a one-on-one battle. Even if Purple Snake's strength was not the strongest among all the evil sovereigns present, he was definitely one of the top 3. He was definitely very strong. The Purple Snake did not dare to underestimate the Great Thousand World. After hearing his words, an evil venerate who looked like a child spoke up after a moment of silence. "Since that's the case, let's do as Purple Snake says. Prepare to revive the evil god." He had the face of a child, but his voice was incomparably hoarse. When this evil sovereign opened his mouth, it immediately gave people an extreme feeling of contrast. However, after hearing his words, the other evil sovereigns did not refute. After all, this person was publicly acknowledged as the strongest among them. He could be said to be the leader of all the evil sovereigns. Since he had already agreed to Zishi's suggestion, the other evil sovereigns could only agree. As for Zishi's plan to revive the evil god, everyone had already discussed it before. Although it was difficult and they could not guarantee a 100% success rate, they had at least an 80% chance of success. Evil god, during the Age of Darkness, was definitely an existence that caused everyone to tremble in fear. he was undoubtedly the leader of the evil path. Even the evil sovereigns present were just subordinates of the evil god. Towards the orders of the evil god, they had to listen to everything. During the war between the good and evil paths, the reason why the Great Thousand World did not have the ability to kill Violet Snake and the other evil sovereigns and could only take a step back and seal them was because the Great Thousand World used all their strength to kill the evil god. The evil god definitely had to be killed. This was something that everyone agreed upon during the war. After all, the evil god was simply too dangerous. His strength had even surpassed the End Realm. Of course, to say that he had completely surpassed the End Realm was a little too exaggerated. Perhaps like Junwuya, the evil god's cultivation had just taken half a step and had not truly surpassed the End Realm. However, even so, the evil god's strength was still extremely terrifying. As such, after the war ended and the Great Thousand World won, Tenza did everything he could to kill the evil god. For this reason, even if he did not have the ability to kill Shi and the others, he did not hesitate. This was because the evil god was too dangerous. Only death could completely eliminate such a danger. Otherwise, as long as the evil god existed, the Great Thousand World would not be truly safe. During the war between the good and evil paths, the evil god's territory was destroyed. Not only the evil god, but even his descendants were all killed to ensure that not a single trace of his bloodline remained in the world. Shi and the others were now preparing to use special methods to revive the evil god. Regarding this, all the sovereigns had completely reached a consensus. According to what Shi had said, since they had broken out of the seal, the Great Thousand World would not ignore them. There would definitely be a battle between the two sides. If the evil path wanted to win, they had to revive the evil god. Only under the leadership of the evil god would the evil path have a chance of winning. Of course, there was one thing that Shi did not say. In his heart, perhaps only the evil god could fight with Junwuya. Without the evil god, who on the evil path could stop Junwuya? Perhaps this was the reason why Shi insisted on reviving the evil god. The battle with Junwuya had unknowingly cast a shadow over Shi's heart. Every time he thought about fighting with the Great Thousand World, Junwuya's figure would unconsciously appear in Shi's mind. Alright, since no one has any objections, let's get ready as soon as possible. I don't think the Great Thousand World will give us too much time, the childlike evil dominator said faintly when he saw that everyone had agreed. As his voice fell, the crowd dispersed one after another. However, at this time, the childlike evil dominator specifically called out to Purple Snake. Shi, come with me. Following which, the two of them slowly left the main hall. As they strolled through the former Wood Spirit sect, the childlike evil sovereign asked faintly. What is the name of the Emperor Venerable from the Great Thousand World that you mentioned? Big Brother Yantong, that person is called Junwuya. Shi replied truthfully. This childlike evil sovereign was called Yantong. He was one of the 3 strongest evil sovereigns under the evil god. As for the other 2, they were killed together with the evil god. Thus, among the evil sovereigns who were still alive, Yantong's strength and status were clearly the highest. Thus, when Shi spoke to Yantong, he was very respectful. Hearing Shi's reply, Yantong softly muttered Junwuya's name. After a while, he suddenly turned to Shi and said, Junwuya, tell me honestly. If I were to fight with him, what are my chances of winning? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 23:15. Yantong asked Purple Snake seriously. As the strongest evil honorable, Yantong also wanted to hear Purple Snake's opinion. After all, Purple Snake had personally fought Junwuya before. Purple Snake understood Junwuya's strength the best. Yantong asked Purple Snake seriously. As the strongest evil honorable, Yantong also wanted to hear Purple Snake's opinion. After all, Purple Snake had personally fought Junwuya before. Purple Snake understood Junwuya's strength the best. Hearing Yen Tong's words, Purple Snake pondered for a moment. Then, he said with a complicated expression, "Although I don't want to admit it, my chances of winning are less than 10%. Even if Yen Tong fought, his chances of winning against Jun Wuya were less than 10%. Hearing Purple Snake's words, a cold light flashed across Yen Tong's eyes. However, it was only for a moment. Then, he said in a deep voice, "Is he really that strong?" With his strength, his chances of winning against Jun Wuya were less than 10%. Yen Tong was unwilling to admit Purple Snake's guess. Seeing the change in Yen Tong's expression, Purple Snake did not say anything. However, in Purple Snake's opinion, it was the truth. Although Yen Tong was strong, Purple Snake was confident that he could contend against him. At least, it would not be easy for Yen Tong to defeat him, let alone kill him. Yen Tong did not have the ability to do so. However, Jun Wuya was different. In the battle with Jun Wuya, Purple Snake had felt the danger of death more than once. If it was not for Chi Mei, who was restraining Jun Wuya, he might have been killed by Jun Wuya last time. Therefore, Purple Snake did not think that Yen Tong had the strength to contend against Jun Wuya. That 10% chance of winning was because Purple Snake cared about Yen Tong's reputation. According to Purple Snake's opinion, Yen Tong did not have the slightest chance of winning against Jun Wuya. After that, the two of them did not speak. They remained silent and returned to their respective residences. In these 2 days, the various evil sovereigns had finished their preparations to revive the evil god. And in order to revive the evil god, the various evil sovereigns' method was to sacrifice the flaming wind world. That's right. The evil sovereigns wanted to sacrifice all the living beings in the flame wind realm. They wanted to use the blood energy of the living beings in the realm to reverse yin and yang and revive the evil god. Massacring the living beings of an entire world was indeed a cruel method. However, they were evil warriors to begin with and were the embodiment of evil. Hence, they did not feel the slightest bit of psychological pressure when doing such a thing. In 2 days, the entire flaming wind world had already been set up with the Great Blood Array. The 16 evil sovereigns were also placed in the 16 array cores according to the Great Blood Sacrifice Array. The blood sacrifice formation was actually not some profound formation. However, with 16 evil sovereigns acting as the eye of the formation, the power that erupted from it was indeed enough to refine all the living beings in the flaming wind world. After everything was prepared, the 16 evil sovereigns activated the blood sacrifice array at the same time. For a moment, every corner of the flame wind world was covered in red light. Clouds of blood covered the sky, and even the dark starry sky was dyed red. The entire flaming wind world seemed to have turned into hell. The terrifying Great Blood Sacrifice Array also erupted with shocking power, continuously killing the living beings in the flaming wind world. Regardless of gender, age, race, or cultivation, as long as one was in the flaming wind world, even if one was an ant, there was no way one could escape. There was simply no way to escape from this terrifying purgatory. Ordinary people without cultivation were immediately refined by the blood sacrifice array. As for those warriors with cultivation, although they could resist for a moment, with the passage of time, they were also refined by the blood sacrifice array, starting from the warriors with low cultivation. At this moment, in an unknown mountain range on the Tianwu continent, the Wu family ancestor and the few ancestors of the Green sect were all closing their eyes with pale faces. They naturally felt the terror of the Great Blood Sacrifice Array. However, as End Realm experts, they were using their own cultivation to resist the corrosion of the Great Blood Sacrifice Array. At the same time, the experts of the Wu family and the Green sect beside them were doing the same. They guarded their minds and used their own spiritual energy to build a layer of defense around their bodies. However, such a defense seemed to be slowly weakening under the constant corrosion of the Great Blood Sacrifice Array. Time passed bit by bit. Blood energy continuously gathered in various parts of the flaming wind world. The entire flaming wind world had become the paradise of the Grim Reaper. As for the experts of the Wu family in the Green sect, some of them were starting to be unable to resist. The experts of the two families who were only in the comprehension realm exploded one after another. It was as if they were crushed by some power. At the same time, their blood energy seemed to be attracted by some power. It didn't fall down, but slowly rose into the sky and floated towards the depths of the starry sky. The comprehension realm experts were already unable to resist the corrosion of the great blood sacrifice array. Next, the Tao realm experts were the same. They exploded one after another. In the end, in just half a day, only the few ancestors of the Wu family and the Green sect were still bitterly holding on. The experts of the two sects who were originally sitting around them had long been obliterated. Not even their bones were left behind. At this moment, one of the ancestors of the Wu family, who had been desperately holding on for half a day, opened his eyes. He revealed a bitter smile and said, "It's fate. Everyone, I'll take my leave first." With that, the Wu family ancestor's body exploded. His blood energy also floated towards the depths of the starry sky. Even an End Realm expert couldn't resist the power of the great blood sacrifice array. Seeing that the Wu family ancestor had died, the other Wu family ancestors cried out in grief. Sixth brother, seeing their own brother die just like that, the other Wu family ancestors were extremely furious. However, there was nothing they could do. After all, the power of the great blood sacrifice array wasn't something they could resist. Not to mention taking revenge, they didn't even know where Shi and the other evil sovereigns were before they were refined by the great blood sacrifice array. Someone had already died. Regarding this, the ancestors of the Green sect were also in despair. This was because the death of sixth brother of the Wu family was also their outcome. It was obviously impossible to escape from the flaming wind world. The only thing they could do was wait for death. Other than waiting for death, there was nothing else they could do. Such a feeling was clearly incomparably despairing. There was no way to resist, nor was there any way to retreat. They could only watch helplessly as their lives were refined by that terrifying mysterious power. Just after sixth brother of the Wu family died, Lu Yao from the Green sect revealed a bleak smile and said, "What's the use of scheming and scheming?" With that, Lu Yao's body also exploded. He died on the spot. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 23:16. Lu Yao was definitely a very smart person, but no matter how smart he was, it was useless at this moment. Faced with the overwhelming power of the evil masters and their unpredictable means, Lu Yao could only die with regret. Lu Yao was definitely a very smart person, but no matter how smart he was, it was useless at this moment. Faced with the overwhelming power of the evil masters and their unpredictable means, Lu Yao could only die with regret. Not long ago, Lu Yao was still planning how to ride on Xiao Chen's coattails, but his plans were far slower than the changes. The appearance of the evil cultivators made Lu Yao unable to resist at all. Lu Yao directly turned into a blood mist and died on the spot. Seeing this, the rest of the ancestors of the Green sect were filled with grief and indignation, but they also knew that Lu Yao's end was actually their end. At the sealed land in the center of the flaming wind realm, streams of blood qi were constantly flowing into the sealed land. Above the sealed land, a huge blood mass had already formed. This blood mass was formed by the blood qi of the many living beings in the flaming wind realm. Blood qi varied in size, and the denser the blood qi, the higher the cultivation level of the living being. In just one day, all the living beings in the flaming wind realm were slaughtered. At this time, there were no signs of life in the flaming wind realm except for the many evil cultivators and the evil masters. In order to resurrect the evil god, the evil masters were indeed heartless and devoid of human nature. The Great Thousand World was unaware of the situation in the flaming wind realm. At this time, the sovereigns of the Great Thousand World, in addition to guarding against the sudden attack of Shi and the others, were also constantly paying attention to the situation in the other two sealed lands. Although there were signs on the surface that the spatial passageways connecting the other two sealed lands to the Great Thousand World were forming, it had not been formed for a long time, which made the sovereigns puzzled. On this day, the sovereigns, as well as the geniuses like Xiaochen, gathered in the main hall again to discuss how to deal with the evil cultivators. This time, the number of sovereigns had increased to 15. Of course, Tenzu was also present. During this period, Xiaochen and the others had participated in such meetings many times, but this time, listening to the debate of the sovereigns, Xiaochen's brows were tightly knitted together. So many days had passed, but there was no response from the evil cultivators. Xiaochen felt more and more strange. Although he could not be sure what the evil cultivators were planning, one thing was that, no matter what they were thinking, it was not a good thing for the Great Thousand World. Seeing that Xiaochen was frowning. Xiaochen. Hearing Daoju's words, Xiaochen came back to his senses and said with a solemn expression, "Is it good or bad for us to keep waiting for the evil cultivators to take the initiative to attack?" Xiaochen's inexplicable words stunned Daoju, but he quickly smiled and said, "Whether it's good or bad is not something we should worry about. After all, the sovereigns are in charge now." In the face of the evil cultivators, the sovereigns were naturally in charge. From the beginning, the sovereigns' intentions were very clear. They would deal with all changes by sticking to the status quo. They would not take the initiative to attack, but wait for the evil cultivators to attack. They would not enter the Flaming Wind realm without knowing the situation. Although this decision was indeed cautious, so many days had passed, and there was no movement from the evil cultivators. Xiaochen felt that they could not wait any longer. In the beginning, because the situation was unclear and they could not determine the overall strength of the evil cultivators, the sovereigns wanted to wait for the evil cultivators to attack. But now that there was no movement from the evil cultivators, it was obviously not beneficial to continue waiting. Thinking of this, Xiaochen glanced at the sovereigns who were still arguing in front of him and took a deep breath. Under Daoju's surprised gaze, Xiaochen stood up and said loudly, "Seniors, I have something to say." In front of the sovereigns and Tenzu, Xiaochen's sudden words obviously attracted everyone's attention. Daoju looked at Xiaochen helplessly. It should be known that although Xiaochen and the others were heaven's prides and monstrous geniuses, they had no right to speak in such an occasion. The only reason they were allowed to participate was to let them listen and gain experience. However, Xiaochen suddenly spoke at this time. After a moment of silence, the thin old man who had been invited by Jun Wuya took the lead and said with a smile, "Brother Wuya, this is your disciple, right? This little guy is quite interesting." He did not show the slightest sign of anger because of Xiaochen's sudden words. As soon as he finished speaking, the thin old man looked at Xiaochen with great interest and said with a smile, "Little guy, what do you have to say?" The other sovereigns did not object to the thin old man's words, but Tao Ming snorted coldly to express his dissatisfaction. Tao Ming naturally did not like Xiaochen, but Xiaochen was not in the mood to pay attention to him. After hearing the thin old man's words, Xiaochen slowly spoke. "Seniors, this junior thinks that we can't wait passively like this any longer." As soon as Xiaochen opened his mouth, he actually opposed the strategic plan of the sovereigns. Hearing this, Tao Ming immediately said coldly, "Xiaochen, be clear about your identity. Our decision is not something you can refute." No matter how strong and talented Xiaochen was, he was still just a junior. At this time, it was obviously inappropriate for him to openly oppose the decision of the sovereigns. Therefore, not only Tao Ming, but also the other sovereigns' faces darkened. However, when the thin old man heard Xiaochen's words, he still said with a smile on his face, "Oh, tell us your reason." The thin old man did not mean to blame Xiaochen. On the contrary, he allowed him to continue speaking. Seeing this, Xiaochen glanced at Jun Wuya, and Jun Wuya nodded slightly with a smile on his face. With Jun Wuya's approval, Xiaochen slowly explained his conjecture. "Seniors, we have gathered the strength of the entire Great Thousand World to guard this place, but after such a long time, the evil warriors have not appeared. Don't you think that there is something wrong?" "So what?" Hearing this, Tao Ming said coldly. In response, Xiaochen completely ignored him and continued speaking. "The evil warriors have not shown any signs of attacking, and we know nothing about the situation in the Flaming Wind realm. I don't think it is a good idea to passively defend like this. Moreover, from various signs, the evil warriors have not made any moves. Perhaps they are secretly plotting something. Although this junior does not know what the evil warrior's purpose is, in this junior's humble opinion, no matter what the evil warrior's purpose is, it is not a good thing for the Great Thousand World. Moreover, if the battlefield can be set in the Flaming Wind realm, it will not be bad for the Great Thousand World. Therefore, this junior thinks that instead of passively defending here, it is better to take the initiative to attack and invade the Flaming Wind realm. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 23:17. Xiaochen had always felt that the evil warriors were plotting something in secret. Xiaochen had been trying to guess the evil warrior's purpose, but he had never been able to figure it out. But now, in Xiaochen's opinion, no matter what the evil warrior's purpose was, as an enemy, the vast thousand world would not give them a chance to succeed. Xiaochen had always felt that the evil warriors were plotting something in secret. Xiaochen had always been trying to guess the evil warrior's purpose, but he had never been able to figure it out. But now, in Xiaochen's opinion, no matter what the evil warrior's purpose was, as an enemy, the vast thousand world would not give them a chance to succeed. If he couldn't figure it out, then he might as well not. Anyway, the vast thousand world would just focus on destroying the evil warriors and not letting them succeed. After hearing Xiaochen's words, the emperors present did not directly refute him. Instead, they fell into deep thought. After a while, it was still the skinny old man who spoke first. This little guy is right. Instead of sitting here and waiting for death, it's better to take the initiative to attack. In any case, this battle is inevitable. The skinny old man was the first to agree with Xiaochen's idea. Jun Wuya also spoke at this time. I also agree. The two emperors agreed with Xiaochen one after another. Then, Dao Xiong, Xiao Xiao, and several other emperors also spoke one after another. In the end, although Tao Ming was very unhappy with Xiaochen, in the face of such a situation, he could only choose to acquiesce. Of course, this was also because there was nothing wrong with Xiaochen's idea. In fact, in the hearts of the emperors, this idea had long been in the minds of the emperors. After all, the evil warriors had not made any moves, so they naturally could not wait forever. His idea was supported by most of the emperors. Xiaochen returned to his seat, and the next matter was up to the emperor ancestors to decide. In the end, after a discussion, the emperors decided on the spot that they would attack the Flame Wind realm tomorrow. As for the other two sealed places, they would leave people to guard them. If there were any changes, they would report it immediately. The other two sealed lands had not appeared for a long time, and the emperors had obviously found it strange. After the meeting, Xiaochen, Dao Ju, Xiao Xiao, and the others returned to their residence. Since they were going to attack the Fiery Wind realm tomorrow, Xiaochen and the others naturally had to accompany them. Although Xiaochen and the rest were from the younger generation, with Xiaochen's strength, as long as they did not encounter the evil dominator, there would not be any problems. Therefore, to the Great Thousand World, Xiaochen and the rest of the Supreme Talents were also a rare force, and naturally, they would enter the Flaming Wind world together. At his residence, Xiaochen told Gu Lingyao, Tianyu, and Hong Xiu about the attack on the Flame Wind realm tomorrow. At the same time, he also sent a letter to Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling to inform them. Soon, Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing also replied, saying that they would reach the western Liang Plains tonight. The war was about to begin, but the Great Thousand World would take the initiative to attack. At the same time, the battlefield was set in the Flame Wind realm. In fact, just as Xiaochen said, setting the battlefield in the Flame Wind realm was not a bad thing for the Great Thousand World. After all, a war of such a scale would naturally have a shocking destructive power. If it was set in the Great Thousand World, it would definitely have a great impact on the Great Thousand World. However, if the battlefield was set in the Flame Wind realm, the emperors would not have to worry about the consequences, because even if the entire Flame Wind realm was destroyed, the impact on the Great Thousand World would be almost negligible, so it would not matter much. At night, Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling arrived at the western Liang Plains safely. After successfully breaking through to the End Realm, the two's combat strength had obviously increased by a lot. The three siblings gathered again, and Xiaochen also briefly explained the current situation to the two of them. Hearing this, Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling also listened seriously. The night was silent. The order to attack the Flame Wind realm had already been issued the day before. Therefore, early the next morning, on the western Liang Plains, the experts of the various sects of the Great Thousand World quickly gathered together. According to the various sects, many experts boarded the spaceships. One after another, the spaceships rose into the sky. Under the gaze of Junwuya, Dao Xiong, the other emperors, and Tenzu, they slowly entered the space tunnel. It had to be said that such a scene was extremely shocking. The spaceships covered the sky, and there were probably tens of thousands of them. On each spaceship sat many experts of the Great Thousand World. Like the others, Xiaochen and the others boarded the spaceship of the Sword Sect. As one of the 10 great Lingtian sects, the Sword Sect naturally sent out many experts this time, a total of 50 to 60,000 people. About 60 spaceships rose into the sky, and Xiaochen, Sangxing, and the other higher-ups of the Sword Sect stood on the deck. They also flew toward the space tunnel of the Flame Wind realm. With all the forces and experts of the Great Thousand World gathered together, the force that erupted was obviously not to be underestimated. Now that this force had entered the Flame Wind realm, it also meant that the prelude to the battle between good and evil had begun once again. The low sound of war drums rang out continuously, and for a moment, the solemn atmosphere before the battle quickly spread in everyone's hearts. After the discussion of the emperors yesterday, the Sword Sect, as the representative of the vanguard, was the first to enter the Flame Wind realm, opening the way for the experts of the other forces. In fact, as the first force to enter the Fiery Wind world, the pressure on the Sword's Gate was naturally the greatest. Needless to say, since the Great Thousand World had set up layers of defense around the spatial passageway, the evil cultivators would do the same. Therefore, as the vanguard, the Sword Sect was naturally under the greatest pressure. However, after the Sword Sect, the experts of the Saber Sect and the Moon Palace followed closely behind, followed by the other forces. The spaceship that Xiaochen and the others were on was the first to enter the space tunnel, slowly disappearing under everyone's gaze. The space tunnel was filled with void storms, and Xiaochen and the others were also resting with their eyes closed in the spaceship. The atmosphere was somewhat oppressive, but there was no other way. Everyone knew that once they exited the space tunnel, they would obviously be facing a great battle. After an unknown period of time, the experts of the Sword Sect sent news that they were about to leave the space tunnel and arrive at the Flame Wind realm. After receiving the news, Xiaochen and the others also came to the deck one after another. From afar, they could see a white dot of light. As it drew closer, the dot of light grew larger. It was clear that this dot of light was the exit of the space tunnel, the entrance to the Flame Wind realm. As they got closer and closer to the exit, the tens of thousands of experts of the Sword Sect on the spaceships were already prepared for battle. The spaceship that Xiaochen and the others were on was the first to rush out of the space tunnel and arrive at the Flame Wind realm again. However, after Xiaochen and the others left the space tunnel, the first thing that Xiaochen saw was an array of evil path cultivators on standby. There were as many as hundreds of thousands of them. Sure enough, Zixi and the others had also set up a heavy defense outside the space tunnel. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 23:18. As the vanguard, the Sword Sect was the first to rush out of the space passage and arrive at the Flaming Wind realm. However, what appeared before Xiaochen and the others were more than 100,000 evil path cultivators. As the vanguard, the sword sect was the first to rush out of the space passage and arrive at the Flaming Wind realm. However, what appeared before Xiao Chen and the others were more than 100,000 evil path cultivators. Seeing Xiao Chen and the others appear, the evil path cultivators did not hesitate at all. Immediately, a strong blood chi soared into the sky. Originally, these evil path cultivators had been resurrected using a secret technique. They didn't have any intelligence. They only knew to listen to the orders of Purple Snake and the other evil sovereigns. And Purple Snake and the other evil sovereigns' orders were to guard the spatial channel to the death. No matter who it was, as long as they appeared from the spatial channel, they were to kill without mercy. Therefore, the evil path cultivators immediately launched an attack, rushing towards Xiao Chen and the others from all directions. Seeing this, Xiao Chen also shouted in a low voice, "Kill them!" Then, he took the lead and charged forward. As the vanguard, the sword sect's mission was obviously the final and most dangerous because they were the first to face the evil path cultivators. They were also the first to rush to the front. However, this was the decision of the sovereigns after all, so Xiao Chen had no reason to refuse. Immediately, following Xiao Chen's command, the experts of the sword sect on the dozens of starships also rushed towards the evil path cultivators. The battle between good and evil that had been stagnant for an unknown number of years had once again begun. In terms of numbers, the sword sect was obviously far inferior to the evil path cultivators. The sword sect had a total of 50 to 60,000 people, but these people were the elites of the sword sect. Ordinary disciples were not qualified to participate in such a battle. Only the inner sect disciples were qualified to participate in such a battle. There was an obvious disadvantage in terms of numbers. Most importantly, these evil path cultivators did not know how to think and did not know how to be timid, let alone retreat. However, at the same time, the sword sect could not retreat. As the vanguard, the sword sect's mission was to block the attacks of the evil path cultivators and successfully occupy the space outside the space passage to open a path for the other sects who arrived later. This would allow the experts of the Great Thousand World to occupy a place in the Flaming Wind realm. They definitely could not retreat. Once they retreated, the experts of the other sects who arrived later would have no place to stand. Therefore, even though there was a clear disparity in numbers, Xiao Chen still pressed forward and took the lead in slaughtering the evil warriors. Long Qing and Xian Yuanling on his left and right and Xian Yuanling. Kill! Xiao Chen shouted angrily after killing an evil path cultivator with one sword. Hearing this, the disciples of the sword sect were also fearless and charged towards the evil path cultivators. As the newly promoted 10 sword head disciples, Qin Kunlun and the others also charged at the front and received the recognition of the 10 Sons sword. In addition to the full support of the sword sect during this period of time, Qin Kunlun and the others' cultivation had also improved by leaps and bounds. Although they were surrounded by many evil path cultivators, Qin Kunlun and the others were still fearless. As the first sword head disciple, Qin Kunlun's body shone with golden light. The first sword in his hand also exuded an endless majestic aura. It was as if an emperor had descended and continuously reaped the lives of the evil path cultivators. Junior brotherly, this time you can't be lazy anymore. Otherwise, when the sect leader blames you, it probably won't be something that the cliff of reflection can solve. Qin Kunlun said to Li Suifeng with a smile as he killed an immortal emperor realm evil path cultivator. Qin Kunlun was domineering and awe-inspiring. He had long become the idol of countless disciples of the sword sect. However, compared to the first sword head disciple Qin Kunlun, the second Li Suifeng was much more ordinary. Although Li Suifeng was also killing enemies, he didn't give off the impression that Qin Kunlun gave off. He looked very ordinary and didn't stand out in the slightest. Hearing Qin Kunlun's words, Li Suifeng didn't take it to heart. He sighed slightly and said, "Sigh, this is really an eventful period. Why did the sect leader have to be the vanguard?" Li Suifeng looked a little helpless. After all, the vanguard was the most dangerous. This was something that everyone knew. However, the sword sect had now become the vanguard. It was easy to imagine the pressure of having to face more than 100,000 evil path cultivators alone. As soon as Li Suifeng finished speaking, some of the sword sect's disciples had already fallen. It couldn't be helped. As long as it was a battle, there would definitely be casualties. This was especially true when there were hundreds of thousands of people on both sides. The evil path cultivators were killed, and the sword sect's disciples were also injured. Hearing Li Suifeng's words, Lu Qingyao also killed an evil path cultivator with a single sword strike. Then, she said with a cold expression, "Cut the crap. Save your strength to kill the enemies." Lu Qingyao unconsciously looked at Xiaochen in the distance. At this moment, Xiaochen was surrounded by thousands of evil path cultivators. However, even though he was surrounded, Xiaochen's expression didn't change at all. Countless blood swords revolved around him. Sword chi filled the sky. One by one, the evil path cultivators fell under Xiaochen's sword. Looking at Xiaochen, Lu Qingyao's face turned slightly red. Seeing this, Li Suifeng smiled bitterly and said, "Okay. Save your strength to kill the enemies. However, junior sister Lu, can you stop thinking about love for now?" "You?" Lu Qingyao's face turned even redder when Li Suifeng saw through her thoughts. However, at this moment, an evil path cultivator attacked. Lu Qingyao had no choice but to face the enemy head-on. As the vanguard, the sword sect was already prepared. Under the leadership of Xiaochen, they didn't have the slightest bit of fear. However, there was still a huge disparity in numbers after all. Those inner sect disciples who were not outstanding in strength were indeed unable to fend off the attacks of so many evil warriors. It was indeed difficult for them to fend off the attacks of so many evil warriors. At the same time, seeing their companions fall one by one, some of the more timid inner sect disciples began to feel afraid. An inner sect disciple looked on helplessly as several of his companions were torn apart by the evil path cultivators. His eyes were filled with fear, and his body seemed to be uncontrollably frozen on the spot. Facing the attacks of two evil path cultivators, this inner sect disciple was stunned and didn't know what to do. He was obviously frightened. It couldn't be helped. For these ordinary inner sect disciples, perhaps they had never experienced such a bloody battle before. It should be known that these evil path cultivators were monsters without intelligence. They didn't fear death and only knew how to kill. Just as this inner sect disciple was about to be killed, a black shadow flashed by and killed the two evil path cultivators, saving the inner sect disciple's life. Then, an indifferent voice sounded. "If you're afraid, then get back to the starship." After saying that, the black shadow rushed into the encirclement of the evil path cultivators and started a massacre. Hearing the black shadow's words, the inner sect disciple's expression changed slightly. Sect master, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 23:19. The attacker was none other than Xiaochen. Along the way, Xiaochen had saved many disciples of the Sword's Gate. Some of these disciples were besieged by the evil cultivators and were unable to fight against so many. Some of them were like this inner disciple, scared out of their wits. In fact, Xiaochen didn't mean to blame these disciples. After all, many of the Sword Sect disciples hadn't participated in a battle of this scale before. One must know that although the Sword Sect and Heavenly Sect had been fighting for many years and both sides had fought many times, the situation this time was completely different from when they faced the evil warriors in Heavenly Sect. Or rather, it was much more tragic. Especially these evil warriors, each one of them did not have a mind of their own. Their actions were like walking corpses, and their killing methods were extremely bloody. Many inner sect disciples were torn to pieces by these evil warriors. Such a scene was too shocking for these inner sect disciples. It was inevitable that they would feel a chill in their hearts. However, now that they were on the battlefield, Xiaochen naturally didn't have the time and energy to slowly enlighten them. He could only use the most direct method. Seeing Xiaochen kill his way into the evil warriors alone, this inner sect disciple pursed his lips tightly. He recalled Xiaochen's words and immediately clenched his teeth and continued to attack the evil warriors. As time passed, the battle became more and more intense. The sword sect had no way out, and the evil warriors wouldn't back down either. Both sides killed each other. However, there was a huge difference in the number of people on both sides. The difference was more than double. Under such a huge difference in numbers, the sword sect gradually fell into a disadvantage. One must know that in such a battle with hundreds of thousands of people, no matter how strong Xiaochen was, it was difficult for him to affect the entire battle. Moreover, the evil warriors also had end-realm experts. A sword sect disciple had to face at least 2 evil warriors. As such, the pressure on the sword sect was naturally huge. It was also because of this that the casualties of the sword sect started to increase. The originally injured disciples were killed by the evil warriors because of Chongshan. Even the elders started to fall. The casualties were getting more and more obvious. However, at this moment, hundreds of space warships appeared from the space tunnel. They were from the Saber sect in the Moon Palace. The sword sect was the vanguard, while the Saber sect in the Moon Palace followed closely behind. The experts of the Saber sect stood on the deck and looked at the intense battle around them. Dao Ju revealed a smile and said, "This time, it's really difficult for the sword sect." With just a glance, he could see how fierce the sword sect was. Saber sect's vice sect leader said. Sect's vice sect leader. Nonsense. If we still want to fight among ourselves at this moment, won't we be seeking our own destruction? Dao Ju immediately cried out coldly when he heard this. He then shouted angrily, "Kill!" Following Dao Ju's words, the experts of the Saber sect also joined in the battle. At the same time, the experts of the Moon Palace also attacked. With the Saber sect in the Moon Palace joining in, the pressure on the sword sect was naturally reduced. Dao Ju and Xiao Xiao also quickly charged to Xiaochen's side. Looking at Xiaochen, Dao Ju laughed heartlessly. "See, I told you not to accept this vanguard mission. You're just sending yourself to your death." In fact, when Xiaochen first received the vanguard mission, Dao Ju had told Xiaochen not to accept it. However, Xiaochen didn't agree. Indeed, Dao Ju was right. Because they were the vanguard, the sword sect's casualties were very serious. However, Xiaochen didn't regret it. He just said indifferently, "Someone has to accept it." Moreover, at this time, if we still have ulterior motives, won't we be digging our own graves? Xiaochen naturally knew that this vanguard mission would cause heavy casualties to the sword sect. However, there was no other way. This time, in order to deal with the evil path, although the major forces of the Great Thousand World had temporarily formed an alliance, there were many internal problems in this alliance. Among the 10 Great Ling Tian sects, who didn't have their own ulterior motives. These ulterior motives, or rather, schemes against each other, were definitely the most dangerous. If things went wrong, the evil path might not even need to act. The Great Thousand World would collapse on its own. Therefore, the reason why Xiaochen accepted the mission of being the vanguard this time was to show the rest of the Ling Tian sects that if they wanted to defeat the evil martial artists, everyone had to be united. It was best to put away those petty thoughts that they shouldn't have. Someone had to pay the price. If you don't accept it, who will be the vanguard? Moreover, it was said that it was Tao Ming who suggested that the sword sect be the vanguard this time. How could Xiaochen not guess this guy's thoughts? Since Xiaochen was the one who suggested taking the initiative to attack, then I think the sword sect should be the vanguard this time. This was what Tao Ming said in front of the emperors, and Xiaochen did not refuse. Hearing Xiaochen's words, Dao Ju also sighed and said, "Sigh, if only some people could think like you." Needless to say, the some people that Dao Ju mentioned were naturally Tao Ming and Yang Chen. This time, the Coiling Heavens sect would be the vanguard. This way, it could be said that they would enter the Flame Wind realm without suffering any injuries. This was because by the time the coiling heaven sect passed through the space passage, the battle would probably have already ended. Speaking up to here, Dao Ju paused for a moment, then said to Xiao Chen, "All right, have your sword sects wounded withdraw. Xiao and I will handle the rest." Many of the sword sect's disciples had died, and the number of injured disciples was even greater. Hearing Dao Ju's words, Xiao Chen did not refuse and immediately told Sang Xing to return the injured disciples to the starship for treatment. With the Saber sect and Moon Palace's experts joining the battle, the Sword sect did not have to fight so desperately, especially those injured disciples who urgently needed medical attention. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Sang Xing naturally nodded and agreed without any hesitation. Previously, Sang Xing's heart was bleeding as he watched his disciples die one by one. These disciples were the Sword sect's treasures, and the death of even one was a loss to the Sword sect. At this moment, after receiving Xiao Chen's order, Sang Xing naturally hurriedly went to make arrangements. Soon, the Sword sect's disciples returned to the starship one by one, and the Saber sect and Moon Palace's disciples took their place in the battle. Facing the Sword sect's disciples who were gradually retreating from the battlefield, the Saber sect and Moon Palace's disciples did not ridicule them at all. Instead, they smiled and nodded with respect. Naturally, the Saber sect and Moon Palace's disciples saw everything that the Sword sect's disciples had done, so they naturally did not object to them leaving the battle at this moment. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 23-20. All the injured disciples of the Sword sect retreated from the battlefield. At this moment, a group of hundreds of injured disciples of the Sword sect were preparing to leave the battlefield. However, a group of evil warriors broke free from the Saber sect and Moon Palace's disciples and charged towards the Sword sect's disciples. Seeing this, the Sword sect's disciples had no choice but to grit their teeth and prepare to fight. However, Qin Kunlun and the others arrived in time and stopped the evil warriors. Senior brother Qin, senior brother Li, seeing Qin Kunlun and the others, the Sword sect's disciples shouted. Hearing this, Qin Kunlun attacked while saying in a deep voice, "Hurry up and leave." Qin Kunlun and the others were not injured and had no intention of retreating from the battle. They had already covered the retreat of the Sword sect's disciples. Hearing Qin Kunlun's words, the Sword sect's disciples quickly turned around and left the battlefield. Although Qin Kunlun and the others were only human, their combat strength was not weak. In addition, they had a divine weapon like the 10 Children's Sword. The evil warriors of the same realm were no match for them at all. They still intended to continue the bloody battle, but there was one exception. With the addition of the Saber sect and Moon Palace, the pressure on the Sword sect was greatly reduced. At this time, Li Suifeng's old habit acted up again and he began to slack off. In the face of an evil warrior who was only at the initial stage of the comprehension realm, Li Suifeng fought with him for more than 100 moves, and there was no clear victor. Li Suifeng's cultivation was at the great circle of the comprehension realm, and his combat strength was comparable to that of a Dao realm expert. However, when facing an evil warrior who was only at the initial stage of the comprehension realm, Li Suifeng could actually fight with him for more than 100 moves. He was obviously going easy on his opponent. Li Suifeng was slacking off leisurely, but at this moment, a bright light flashed and the evil warrior who was fighting with Li Suifeng was killed. Then, Qin Kunlun appeared in front of Li Suifeng and said helplessly, "Li Suifeng, if you continue to slack off like this, I will tell the sect master." In the face of such a powerful enemy, Li Suifeng still wanted to slack off. This made Qin Kunlun angry and helpless. However, just as Qin Kunlun finished speaking, a burst of laughter suddenly sounded. "Ha, you are the Sword sect's #1 disciple, Qin Kunlun." Along with the voice, 4 young men and women of the Saber sect appeared before Qin Kunlun. The one who spoke was a handsome young man with a black saber on his back. When he saw the 10 young men appear, Qin Kunlun immediately recognized their identities and softly said, "Disciples of the Saber disciple." Sword sect, Saber sect and Saber sect's disciples as Saber's Saber children's of. and Saber's saber sect. Sect and the sword saber and saber sect and saber sect and saber sect and saber sect and also saber sect were disciples too. And sword disciples and sword sect and saber children's and saber sect and disciples. Seeing that Qin Kunlun had recognized his identity, the young man with the black saber smiled and said, "That's right, I am Bayamo. You should know me." Bayamo hearing this name, Qin Kunlun's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. At the same time, the first sword in his hand let out a sword cry. Then, Qin Kunlun said with a smile on his face, "Of course I have heard of you. I have admired the number one disciple of the Saber sect for a long time. It is a pity that I have not had the chance to learn from you." His words were filled with fighting spirit. As the number one disciple of the sword sect, Qin Kunlun and Bayamo were natural competitors. After becoming the number one disciple, Qin Kunlun had specially collected information about Bayamo. Although it was the first time they had met, Qin Kunlun knew Bayamo very well. He knew Bayamo's life story like the back of his hand. Similarly, Bayamo was the same for Qin Kunlun. Knowing that the sword sect had once again established the top 10 sword fanatics, Bayamo had also specially learned about Qin Kunlun. He knew that Qin Kunlun was a talented person who lived up to his reputation. The two looked at each other and sparks seemed to fly in the air. At this time, a lazy young man beside Bayamo stood up and said, "Why don't you two fight here?" The young man's name was Zhang Lunqing. He was ranked second among the top 10 saber disciples. Zhang Lunqing also looked lazily at Li Suifeng beside Qin Kunlun and said with a smile on his face, "Li Suifeng." Hearing Zhang Lunqing's words, everyone thought that the two of them were going to be like Qin Kunlun and Bayamo. However, no one thought that Zhang Lunqing would suddenly say, "Why don't we find a place to spar?" His voice was extremely lazy. Hearing this, Li Suifeng actually agreed without thinking. Okay. The two of them agreed to spar, but it seemed that the two of them were not going to spar. They were obviously going to slack off. Looking at the two of them, there was no fighting spirit. Just as Li Suifeng and Bayamo were about to leave, Lu Qingyao and a beautiful girl beside Zhang Lunqing both shouted, "Stop, if you want to kill the enemy, we can talk about other things later." They almost spoke in unison. Then, the two girls involuntarily glanced at each other, then snorted coldly at the same time and turned their heads away. It was the first time that the top 10 saber disciples and the top 10 sword fanatics met, and the scene became very strange. However, at this time, Qin Kunlun and Bayamo also spoke one after another. "Let's kill the enemy first, we can talk about other things later." Okay. As they spoke, under the leadership of Qin Kunlun and Bayamo, both sides joined the battle at the same time. Perhaps there was a faint intention to compete. At this time, both sides used all their strength, and there was no mercy in their attacks. Both of them displayed powerful combat strength, especially Qin Kunlun and Bayamo. The two of them were like the god of death descending. Wherever they passed, there would be rivers of blood, but no one could stop them. "Ha, Qin Kunlun, I want to fight with you more and more." After killing an evil warrior, Bayamo looked at Qin Kunlun and laughed loudly. Hearing Bayamo's words, Qin Kunlun, who had also killed an evil warrior, also smiled and replied, "Same to you. When there is time, I will definitely fight with you." "Okay, it's a deal." Hearing this, Bayamo's eyes were filled with fighting spirit as he replied. Qin Kunlun and Bayamo were secretly competing, and Lu Qingyao and the beautiful girl were also doing the same at this time. After killing one person, Lu Qingyao turned to look at the beautiful girl and said coldly, "You must be Zhao Yulin." Zhao Yulin, the third of the top 10 saber disciples, smiled faintly when she heard Lu Qingyao's words. "Yes. After killing these evil warriors, I want to fight with you." Hearing this, Lu Qingyao snorted coldly. "I can't ask for more." Hearing this, Zhao Yulin was not to be outdone. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.